morning as well, but it's settled in nicely. The skies are blue, and you can get a little sunshine on this Tuesday afternoon. Enjoy it come January, because these days oftentimes do not come around during this month. A lot to do on a Tuesday, and as it is every day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. That's Porter Larson producing the show behind the glass today, with a lot to do, a lot to get to on the program. Just a couple of days away from the final few games of the college football slate, at least the semifinals. We'll learn who's going to be playing for that national championship. Don't forget, we are your home for the college football CFP semifinal, so we will see who advances on to the championship game. We'll also have the national championship game for you. We are your home for the biggest and best live football events in the market, including the NFL Wild Card Weekend that's ahead. The Black Monday effect is spilling over now into Black Tuesday, more people losing their jobs. And the latest is Antonio Pierce is out as the Raiders head coach after a couple of years at the helm, leading a lot of people to wonder whether or not the Raiders will contact the current head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes. His name is Deion Sanders. We'll have to see how that goes down, but a lot of NFL on the show today as we'll get you ready for the Wild Card Weekend and talk about the job openings as of right now. Weird thing happening in Dallas because, of course, Mike McCarthy potentially is going to interview with the Chicago Bears while still being under contract with the Dallas Cowboys. And Jerry Jones is too busy filming television series to take anything seriously. So we'll get to the latest with the job circle and carousel in pro football. Daniel Jones has been signed to the 53-man roster for the Vikings for the playoffs. So we'll get to the injury news and notes as well. Jalen Hurts still in concussion protocol. If you're an Eagles fan, of course, you're kind of holding your breath there. 2 games on Saturday in pro football, and then a full slate on Sunday, culminating with what should be a really good Monday night game. The Vikings and the Rams. Interesting to consider what's at stake for Sam Darnold. Should he have another stinker like he had last week? Because, of course, J.J. McCarthy waiting in the wings. So, NFL playoffs, right around the corner. Great time of year. College football semifinals, right around the corner. Great time of year. A fun game last night we had on the station as college football continues to be very topical. No real local news on the college football landscape. As we talked about yesterday from the University of Utah side of things, just kind of looks like the roster for now is what it is, and other mechanisms potentially at Coach Witt's disposal to add talent prior to the start of fall, of course, and fall is a long way away, but really no news as far as the current state of the local scene in college football. We do have some college basketball tonight. Utah is at Iowa State. You can hear that game when we say goodnight. At 6 o'clock, Iowa State is the number 3 team in the country. They're really good. They're an 18.5-point favorite over the Utes. Brigham Young welcomes in Texas Tech down in Provo. Utah State, a top 25 team on the road, San Jose State. And the Utah Jazz welcome in an old friend tonight as Quinn Snyder and the Atlanta Hawks are in town. So a lot to do on the show. Good guest list. We'll start things off to learn a little bit more about the current state of the Utah men's basketball team prior to the game tonight. Sean Mooney, friend of the show, color analyst on the broadcast, alongside the voice himself, Bill Riley. Sean stops by today to hopefully give us a little bit of good news, maybe. A little bit of silver lining. The first 2 Big 12 games have been, how shall we say, not competitive for Utah basketball. Iowa State's, like I said, really good. They never lose at home. And they're the number 3 team in the country. Iowa State right now is 12-1, number 3 in the country, as I should say that. And the Utes hoping to maybe take a couple of steps forward. Iowa State's only loss this year is against Auburn, who at the time was the top five team in the country. Iowa State has started off Big 12 play with wins at Colorado and a absolute just demolishing of Baylor, a team that really handled Utah well. So Utah big underdog on the road. So we'll get the latest from Sean Mooney on the Utah Utes. Tim McMahon, NBA Daily Assist style. Jazz been playing a little bit better. The trade deadline is less than 5 weeks away. What does Tim have to say about the current state of the Jazz as they continue to build the foundation for hopefully what they believe to be is a excellent finished product once upon a time? So we'll bring in Tim today to talk some Jazz and some NBA. Scott Mitchell back on the show. Scott has been a world traveler. That's what you're allowed to do when you're basically part-time retired. I want to do a little NFL with Scott today. He played in Detroit. What would it mean for Detroit Lions fans if Dan Campbell is able to coach this team through the postseason and maybe win the Super Bowl? I mean, just to kind of get a sense of what that game on Sunday meant to them, and it wasn't even a playoff game. It was to lock in the number one seed, and Lions fans were going crazy. It was like the biggest football game in Detroit in like 40 or 50 years. And then, of course, we'll do some Utes with Scott today. Belle Frazier, our friend from the Salt Lake Tribune, will stop by to do a little Utah Hockey Club on the program. It's been a rough stretch for the hockey club. They've got a grip of home games coming up. We'll see what Belle has to say about our local hockey team. So a little basketball, little NBA, little college basketball, little NFL, little college football too. Some hockey on a Tuesday in January. Sean Mooney, Tim McMahon, Scott Mitchell, Belle Frazier, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. And producing the program today is Porter Larson. All right, give me, if you can think of an example, give me one subconscious habit you seem to have that you know you shouldn't do, but for some reason you continue to do. I bring it up because for some reason, every 2 or 3 weeks, I get ready to come into work. I fill up my water bottle, ready to roll, screw the top, clearly not tight enough, throw the water bottle in the backpack, and by the time I get to work, everything is soaking wet, and the water bottle is empty. And I continue to do it, even though I know I should not do it. And it's like the dumbest thing. It should be the easiest thing to fix. Is there a dumb guy hobby you have that, or a habit you have, I should say, that you can't get out of your own way about?
That's a good kind of random radio topic. First off, you're not alone in that regard. I have done the don't tighten your bottle tight enough and douse everything that you own.
You want to stew on it? I kind of put you on the spot.
I mean, you did kind of put me on the spot. Like, I chew on my nails way too much. I pick my nose all the time. I don't know.
Okay, gross. A little less vulnerability, a little less honesty. That's gross.
That's not how I roll. You know that.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get weird to start the show. Why don't you think about it? Let's come back to you a little bit later on, and we'll do something that doesn't make people want to throw out their lunch.
I can find some subconscious habits that I need to get rid of.
Okay. All right. Get some tissues. There's some in the studio if you need some. Our first guest today, Sean Mooney. Talk a little college football before we get to Sean. Courtesy of our good friends at Standard Restaurant Supply, your one-stop shop for all your tailgate needs. Check them out online or their convenient location here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, on a Tuesday afternoon. It's time now for your opening tip. All right, a little bit of a random idea for opening tip today. I've made it a point over the past month or so, whenever the Cleveland Cavaliers are playing a really good team, and if the time slot works, I mean, they're obviously an East Coast team, and I'm on air until 6, which is 8 o'clock Eastern time. I try to dig in to see what Kenny Atkinson has done with this team and why they're off to this 31-4 start. I mean, everybody believes Boston's the best team in the Eastern Conference. They're 5.5 full games behind the Cavs. And look, love or hate Donovan Mitchell, I'll always cheer for Donovan because I'll never forget the 5 years he spent here. And I covered Donovan right out of the gates after the Jazz drafted him. At the time, I was anchoring our draft day coverage on the old radio station, and our broadcast partner was the Jazz. So they put me on the phone with Donovan right after he was drafted to interview him. I was the first media member in Salt Lake City to interview Donovan Mitchell because we had the draft coverage, and after the Jazz drafted him, I believe it was maybe Jonathan Reinhardt at the time, maybe it was my guy Dunio, puts Donovan on the phone, and I spent 10 minutes with him, interviewing him on our draft night coverage, and I was blown away. I was unbelievably impressed that for a young man his age, he seemed so polished, he seemed so sharp, he seemed so not articulate, but he knew exactly what to say to this fan base. And, we later learned that Donovan's father was Donovan, I should say, was raised in the world of professional sports because his father is an executive with the Mets. And Donovan, once he started to kind of rise up the ranks, and we're not going to do a Donovan Mitchell history lesson. I'm going to land the plane, but just stick with me for a second. Donovan came up as a baseball prospect. And then when he really started to grow, and by grow, I don't necessarily mean vertically. Like next time Donovan's in town, if you go to a Jazz game, look at his wingspan, look at his arms, look at his hands. They're big, they're padded. He's got incredible length with both his legs and his arms. He moves really well laterally, and he started to excel in basketball as a teenager, but not until then, and ultimately was analyzed as a defensive stopper coming out of Louisville. Donovan himself didn't think that he was ready to go to the pros until Chris Paul said, look, you're ready, man. Somebody's going to give you a shot. Just go put the work in, and Donovan did that here. And so watching him burst on the scene as a rookie when he took over for Rodney Hood. Rodney Hood at the time was supposed to be the player who was going to step up and fill the void left by Gordon Hayward. That lasted like 5 games. Quinn Snyder, who's in town tonight with the Hawks, said, okay, Donovan, okay, rookie, the car is yours. Here are the keys. Let's go. And he allowed Donovan to grow through some inevitable growing pains that most young players go through, but it didn't take too long. I think it was January, if I remember correctly, Donovan's rookie year when the Pelicans rolled into town. And I'm watching the game with Britton Johnson, my old partner for the Utah Jazz pre-half and post, and, of course, Ute basketball legend. And Donovan starts cooking early, and Britton turns to me and said, he's getting 40 tonight. I'm like, no way, because I don't think he had scored 30 up to that point. And sure enough, Donovan dropped 40 on the Pelicans, and that was kind of his welcome to the national narrative, the national NBA narrative. Not a lot of people thought the Jazz were going to be any good that year at all because Hayward had left. No one knew anything about Mitchell, and Gobert still looked like a baby giraffe running up and down the floor, although he was showing signs. But it was Donovan's ascension, his rookie year, that really should have won him the award for Rookie of the Year, but that went to Ben Simmons, who was a second-year player, even though he was injured and missed his first year. I've never liked that dynamic. Different topic, different day. And then, as the story goes, COVID changed that iteration of the Utah Jazz forever. COVID changed a lot of things forever that are more important than basketball, but for the sake of a sports talk radio show, COVID changed that team. Gobert tests positive. There was the false narrative that Rudy gave it to Donovan, and now we know, in retrospect, nobody has any clue who gave it to Rudy or Donovan. Donovan could have given it to Rudy, but of course the CAA circle comes together. They bully Rudy, in my opinion. Adrian Wojnarowski sends out a horrifically misguided tweet in Rudy's direction, clearly getting his CAA buddy Donovan Mitchell's back. And suddenly Rudy became this punching bag, and that team was fractured. And then, of course, that was the summer of Black Lives Matter and the murder of George Floyd, and Donovan started looking at things that, quite frankly, he had never looked at before by his own admission. And it changed the way that he was thinking about his role as a black man in the world and in the NBA, which is great. Good for him. There's nothing wrong with it, but it certainly changed the way that he felt about living here. And I think some of our local legislators, mainly the ones who told Donovan to go learn about his own history, probably didn't do our market any favors to hold on to this really special generational player. And that's what he is, okay? And so the reason I bring it up in that direction is I'll always kind of cheer for the kid and hope that he figures it out in a way where he has better success in the spring, and nothing that Donovan does in the fall or the Cavs do in the fall will change the narrative that Donovan so far has hit this playoff ceiling. It's not that he can't play in the playoffs. I mean, we watched him go for a 50-piece in the bubble, and we've seen him have some of the most historic scoring postseason games in the history of this organization, the Jazz, and he's going to continue to do it for the Cavs. But I just wanted to present this because The Athletic did this ranking of the best front offices in all of the major sports. And when I say all the major sports, I mean basketball, baseball, football, and they included hockey as well. And these lists have come out from time to time. It's not a new list. And you can go back and look at some of the lists of the best front offices in all of sports or in the NBA when Scott Layden was running the show, when Kevin O'Connor was running the show, when Dennis Lindsay was running the show, and when the Millers owned the team. The Jazz were always in the top 3 or 5 in the NBA and always in the top 10 or 20 in all of sports. And with the latest list, the Jazz come in at number 51, just ahead of the Minnesota Wild, the NHL team. And look, when you look at some of the NBA teams in their stratosphere, they're just behind Philadelphia, the 76ers. Their general manager, Daryl Morey, is thought to be one of the more bright forward thinkers in all of pro basketball. And then Dallas is at 52. So Dallas is another front office that has a decent reputation, but this is a far, far cry from where the Jazz front office once upon a time used to be ranked year after year. Why did I bring up Donovan? Well, what will we say if Donovan Mitchell and the Cleveland Cavaliers go win the NBA championship this year? Because through 34 games played, Donovan has been really healthy this year. The numbers continue to be exactly what they've been, okay? So it's 23 points, it's 5 assists, it's 4 boards. The splits are pretty good. He's shooting 41% from 3 on 9 attempts per game. He's not getting to the free throw line as much, okay? So he's not attacking the rim as much as he did when he was here. He's down to 81% from the line on 4 free throw attempts. He shoots 46% from 2. And so ultimately, this is a year that quantifiably, when you look at the data, it does not indicate that Donovan has taken this massive leap. But the way he is playing in Kenny Atkinson's system, he has committed himself on the defensive side of the floor that even by his own admission, he never has in his career, which I'm sure fans around here are like, thanks, dude. Appreciate the effort while you were here. But he's playing winning basketball in a way that he's never played winning basketball. He's a better playmate in the sandbox with his teammates than he ever was when he was here. And we had Tim Bontemps on the show last week, and Tim dropped the line that I just haven't been able to shake since he said it last week. And I asked him about whether or not we need to start talking about the Cavs as championship contenders. I mean, hell, they're 31-4. They're on pace to win more than 70 games. Like, that's not nothing. They've won 10 straight, and like I said, they've separated themselves from the Celtics. And Tim said something that slapped me across the face. He said, well, come spring, we're going to find out if they're for real or if they're simply just Utah Jazz East. And that's because of the way the roster is constructed. They have a center in Jared Allen who's not as good as Rudy is on the glass or protecting the rim, but he's a very good defensive center, and he is a good rebounder. And then we could do the exercise of kind of comparing some of the other players. Did Darius Garland, a Mike Conley role? You know, we could go down the list as Karis LeVert, Joe Ingles, or whatever it is. The team actually is built somewhat similarly to the Jazz team that Donovan played on while he was here. But what would happen if Donovan goes on and the Cleveland Cavaliers go on and win the championship? What would be fair to say about this front office right now with the Utah Jazz and this organization where they did make the decision to trade Donovan Mitchell? And Donovan's only 28 years old. And I think the thing that really stings is when you look at Donovan's preferred destination, there's no room for him anywhere in New York. So it does lead me to wonder if the front office decided to tell Donovan, like, look, we know that maybe it's not as comfortable as you'd like it to be here, but give us a chance. You're on a contract for a couple of years. We have a really good team. Quinn's an awesome coach, because I think if that team stayed together, remember, Quinn left because he said there's no way forward. I don't see any way forward. I don't think he wanted to work with this ownership group, but that's a different story. But if the team came back, there would have been a way forward, because Gobert's been great since he left here. Royce O'Neal's been much better than he was when he was here, wherever he's been. And Donovan has now elevated himself to potentially a first-team all-league guy for maybe the favorite to win the NBA championship through the first 35 games. Not according to Vegas, but they're 31-4. They've beaten a lot of really, really good teams. And with the front office rankings and the reputation of this Jazz front office, ownership group / front office, really lagging far behind what the front office was prior to and the ownership group was prior to, it'll be interesting to see what the conversation sounds like if Donovan, at the age of 28, has really cracked this code and has taken a city in Cleveland that, according to market size, isn't a whole lot bigger than what Salt Lake is, to the promised land, and wonder if he could have done it here. And that's not necessarily fair, because there's not enough time to unpack every single reason as far as why they traded him. But I've always believed, and still will, that there was plenty of meat left on that bone. We'll do some NBA with Tim McMahon, but coming up next, Utah basketball, tough game tonight. Sean Mooney stops by to break it down. It's a weird weather day because it's not warm, but the sun rolls in through the window. Then it fools you into thinking that you're warm. So I'm kind of alternating between beanie and sweatshirt and then no beanie and T-shirt. Although I like the beanie and T-shirt look because it makes me feel like I'm Eminem.
There you go.
Like if 8 Mile, walking down the streets of Salt Lake, blasting Lose Yourself, delusionally confident in my ability to attack anyone who comes my way.
There you go. It's not warm. It's, I don't know, above freezing, though. I walk to work, so I know the walk home is going to be much cooler. You know where it's not warm? Ames, Iowa.
Is our guy Sean on the line?
Yeah.
Utah basketball in action, and the line has moved. Okay, so good news. Utah is no longer an 18.5 point underdog. They're now a 16.5 point underdog. So a massive ask for Craig's team on the road, and our guy Sean Mooney joins us on a Tuesday afternoon. Sean, happy Tuesday, man. How we doing?
Thanks, Spence. How are you doing? I can see you in that beanie and the T-shirt. I'm not going to get near you.
Delusionally confident. I mean, look, I can throw these things if I need to, Sean. And when you have the beanie and the T-shirt look, you just have a level of confidence that, quite frankly, is probably unhealthy.
It definitely is unhealthy. The last time we spoke, I think I was standing outside Hinkle Fieldhouse, and our bet was something to the effect that if we won that game, that would be against Indiana State, that Bill and I would dance. I want you to know, Spence, since then, Bill and I have danced, and I do have it on video. But if the Utes can pull off the win tonight, I'll send it to you.
Oh, my gosh. Now, I don't want to talk about anything else. You're telling me you have Bill Riley dancing on video?
Technically, he's not dancing. Technically, he's singing and I'm dancing, but it's about as close as we're going to get.
Okay, no, that is as close as you will get because a couple of times in studio, I caught Bill like dancing to a bump and I shamed him because you don't want to see Bill dance. For our listeners, you do not want to see him dance. So I immediately asked him to stop, and I think I probably dissuaded him from dancing ever again.
We dance next to each other all the time with, little moves, not big moves, because we got headsets on just like you do right now.
For sure. All right, before we get to tonight, let's see. Hilton Coliseum, Iowa State has not lost in forever. I think it's 26 straight home wins for Iowa State. So before we get to tonight, I need you to tell me from your vantage point simply, are you seeing improvement? I mean, let's start with baby steps because the first couple of Big 12 games, they have been housed. And I can't really spin it any other way, but you watch all these games up close. From the start of the season, the start of non-con, to where we're at today, are you seeing this team incrementally get better?
That's a really tough question. Yes, but we haven't gotten over the hump. To me, the hump would have been getting one of those wins against a good team, Mississippi State. We were really close. We're up 11, couldn't get it. Obviously couldn't beat Iowa, couldn't beat St. Mary's. And then, my goodness, we opened with two of the most efficient teams, Baylor and TCU. And then you see what Iowa State does to Baylor, and now we're playing Iowa State, an ugly beginning to a conference that's as tough as it gets. I do think we're getting better, but I don't know that we're really sure who we are yet, Spence.
And that's actually, you read my mind, because that's where I want to go next. And ultimately, if you've ever tried to play basketball against basketball players that are bigger, stronger, and more talented than you are, you know that the only way to compete is to find some sort of advantage in kind of a sneaky way, whether it's junking it up on defense, the Utes' great national championship run, Majerus triangle and 2 against Arizona, stuff like that, boxing 1, whatever it is. But if you don't match up man-to-man, talent-wise with the other team, and Sean, let's just call it how it is. So far, talent-wise, Craig feels like he's marching into a gym with a serious disadvantage simply with the players on his roster. All due respect. Hopefully that can change. But as far as who they are and the identity of the team and the culture Craig is trying to build, what are some of your takeaways as far as what you're seeing that's tangible, and what are some things you'd like to see implemented to indicate this thing is going in the right direction?
Yeah, a couple of things. So number one, and Craig talked about it today, and listeners will hear this in our pregame, we do need to junk it up. You're exactly right. We're mostly a man-to-man team, and we definitely know what the other teams are bringing us. But right now, we can't really take away option 1 or option 2. One of Majerus' strengths was that they could take our teams took away option 1, and you had to go to option 2, and then we could take that away, and you had to go to option 3. We don't have that footprint right now. It's not like we don't have the ability, because I think defense is really so much about communication and understanding what you've got to take away. So to answer that question better, just like you said, the thorn in our side is we have 11 that can play, are playing, which
trimmed a little bit from 10 or 11 to maybe your best 8 or 9. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is good. I mean, I of course was the 12th guy or the 13th guy in a 12-man roster and didn't play much. So I'm always rooting for those guys at the end of the roster. Our guys are pretty even, top to bottom. Caleb Warner started that game primarily, not because Caleb didn't deserve it, but because Ez had a family member. Ezra also had a family matter he had to deal with. He's here today. Yeah, I do think that it does help to get to 8 or 9 and to come to the conclusion that you're going to have some starters. And then obviously the bench is always a powerful motivator for kids. Like Miro got relegated to the bench in that last game, partly because he struggled so much. I thought Mike did a good job in that position. It's Mike and Miro. But I do think that it would help if you kind of got your minutes in order and you know what you're going to get. I think that's a difficult job, but that's the coach's job.
You know, it's interesting. If you look at the Big 12 rankings as far as the numbers go, Utah leads the conference in assists per game, 20.5 assists per game. Is that a reflection? You know, it's kind of interesting, like watching the Jazz right now and watching the way that Will Hardy wants them to play. They don't have a Shea. They don't have a Luka. They don't have a ball-dominant lead guard where you can 1-4 flat or ISO and say, you go make a play. And so even Markkanen's not that dude. He just isn't an isolation guy. He's really good. And so you want, if you're Will Hardy, you want to see everybody eat because you do not have that one ball dominant guy. It doesn't feel like Utah has that ball in hand playmaker either. Is the assist number per game simply the way that Craig wants to play based off the roster? Like we've got to share the basketball because we are not ISO dominant?
Yeah, Spencer, you're good. You've watched a lot of basketball. Yeah. The difference between us and the teams that we've lost to this year is they have 2 or 3 players that can get it done off the bounce. So they can either score at the rim off the bounce, or they can get 2 feet in the paint and draw and make a good pass, or they're mid-range, so they're like 3-level scorers. We technically don't have any 3-level scorers, and we don't get many easy buckets. That's one of the reasons why you see us getting so many assists, and we do change it well. That's our strength this year. We need kids that can get it off the bounce more than what we have right now.
All right, so moving over to your impressions of just the overall finish our hit, because, you know, it's just been interesting to watch the different reactions of the different sports with the new challenge. And, you know, Gavin, it's interesting, interestingly enough, the women had a tougher challenge in the Pac-12 than they do in the Big 12. And so talking to Coach Rob before Gavin took over, like their challenge is a little bit different. And I think they have a chance to really compete at a high level in this conference on the women's side. The football side, it feels the same. A bunch of like good teams that beat the crap out of each other. But on the men's basketball side, this is a massive jump up in a way that I'm not sure most of our listeners fully understand because I don't know how many of our listeners have paid much attention to the landscape of college basketball outside of the prism of the team they watch. So your early impressions, not just the games that you've seen Utah play, but how would you articulate from a 30,000-foot view, Sean, just how tough this conference is for Craig to traverse?
I mean, it's ridiculous. So the SEC is the best conference right now. They're probably going to get 11 this year. The Big 12 is right behind them with 11 teams in the NCAA tournament. The Big 12 probably with 9. I know it's early, but you've got 3 teams, maybe 4 teams in the Big 12 that could win it all. Those 3 definitely being Iowa State, Houston, Kansas, and I'm going to throw my sleeper in. I know people are down on them, but Arizona. Now, they're not up there right now, but they're going to be. That's a good team. It's just the 30,000-foot view is fans are really engaged. The Baylor fans were engaged. Fantastic facility. We're going to go into probably one of the toughest places to play in the country, 3rd longest active winning streak. And other than a few teams, I think it's going to be like that for the entire 20-game schedule.
Do you think Utah is going to be favored in any of the games in conference play?
Bill and I were just talking about this over pizza. Maybe Oklahoma State at home.
All right. And that's it.
Probably.
Goodness gracious. Did Bill order a peach Snapple or a peach iced tea with his pizza?
You know him so well.
Yeah, just wondering. Just make sure he gets his refills because he can get grumpy prior to the game. All right, let's move over now to this challenge. As you referenced, Iowa State, they just don't lose at home.
Yeah.
They don't lose at Hilton Coliseum. It's one of the longest active home streaks in the nation, as you referenced. And they've got a roster with a lot of depth. Like Craig, they play 9 guys more than 14 minutes. So what have you learned about Iowa State throughout your prep, and what do you think Utah has to do to at least make it a fair fight down the stretch? I guess is how I'll ask it.
Yeah. So a couple of things. I think they have the best 3-guard tandem in the country, and I know there's a really good guard at Marquette, and there are a lot of other good guards. But Tamin Lipsey is a glue guy. He's a disruptor. He will not be denied getting over screens. Keyshawn Gilbert, Big 12 MVP tournament last year. He's only gotten better. And Curtis Jones, number 5, comes off the bench and he scores 16 points a game. And that's not even talking about their inside guys, which they didn't really have last year. Now they have 3 inside guys that can get it done. 2 that they run through, Deshaun Jackson and Joshua Jefferson from St. Mary's. And then the kid I haven't even mentioned, Mom Silovich, Los they call him. That kid can shoot it from anywhere and will make them.
Yeah, going to be a tough ask on the Utah side. Just give me some keys. How can they counter this? Is it simply is it shot making? Are you looking for a different rotation? Are you looking for a different approach? Like as you're sitting there courtside, Sean, watching the game early, what do you want to see from the team early on to indicate, okay, maybe this won't be the long night most of us anticipate?
Yeah, the number one thing is physicality. Our team has to play with a high level of physicality. And what that means basically is, like, say, Spence, I'm guarding you on the wing and you cut. I'm not going to just let you go wherever you want to go. If you're a shooter and you're going around a ball screen, the screen is coming to the ball, I've got to go over that screen. You got to see us tell them where to go. And we're going to rake off or raid off, or we're going to dig down. We're going to help off of 2 of their most important players that are also drivers, which is Keyshawn Gilbert and Tamin Lipsey. They can both hit threes. They'll hit big threes, but watch those positions. So when we rake down or raid down, let's see if we can't get back and stop or level off that drive, because it's coming. So I think we also have to junk it up, just like you said. We can't just show them man-to-man. We got to show them a little zone. With
the physicality, I would imagine Caleb can have a role to play there. And, of course, he comes over from the football team and missed the start of the season, so he's still getting his feet wet. Did get a start. He's only played in 6 games. What have you seen so far since he's been cleared to play, for Craig, and he's getting himself into basketball shape? But yes, it is different than football shape, okay? It just is, and it will take a minute. And when he is fully acclimated, what do you think he can be for the team?
Yeah, I mean, he's a defensive stopper. There's no question. He's got a body, and he's fast enough. He moves his feet well enough. Not only can he hedge out hard hedge and get on a guard and defend a guard well, but he's going to defend the post extremely well, right? He can slip it. He can get off of the post. He can get in front. He's a very good rebounder. He's a kid who knows his role. Pretty much he's had to roll his whole life. He's not necessarily a shooter, right? But what he's trying to do is put pressure on the paint. When he gets a catch outside, you'll see him dribble in, 2-foot jump stop, make a pass, and then he's an offensive rebounder. I mean, he could be our best offensive rebounder. I think Keanu Dawes is, but I think he's a very established role player, which every team needs.
Let me ask you one more Ute question, then I actually have a BYU question, and I'll set you loose so you can get back to it. But we were talking about the need to have a ball-in-hand guy who can make plays, just a lead guard who can dribble, who can pass, who can get for himself and get for others. Are there any candidates on the roster as somebody who you think can grow into that role? Because, look, Gabe is great, but it's just not Gabe's game, and that's all right. It doesn't have to be. Gabe is awesome at what Gabe does, but is there a ball-in-hand guy potentially on the roster?
Yeah, absolutely. Both Mike Sharjamps and Miro, they both are. Miro's very much a confidence kid, and this is really his freshman year. He didn't play much at Baylor last year. He's a sophomore. Mike's had more games under his belt. They're both the guys that have to be the ball in hand. Now, the question is, are either of them going to blow by this level of athleticism? Probably not. So they got to play within their ability and do what they've got to do. But we really need them to be able to penetrate. when they need to penetrate and 2-foot jump stop, be under control, and make good passes out of those situations. Right now, Spence, we have no one really that gets easy buckets for us, and we need that. And that's a ball in hand guy, like you say. That's what a ball in hand guy does.
For sure. All right, before I set you loose, I don't watch a ton of high school basketball. I mean, for the job, you have to watch so many things, and then I would prefer to have a life at times, so I'm not like dialed in on high school hoops. And when I started to hear the rumors about A.J. DeBanza potentially looking at BYU, and the rumors started like a year ago when he transferred here to play for whatever that school is. There are a lot of questions about what exactly it is, but he played some high school ball here for a school that I don't know. But started to hear rumors that BYU might lock this guy in. And then I was told by somebody down there that they had him about 2 weeks before he and his father went on First Take and shocked the world. Like, my favorite part about that was Stephen A. Smith essentially saying, like, wait, where is BYU? Like, he couldn't wrap his mind around the decision. And so after that went down, I started watching tape on the kid, and, like, he is everything that everybody says. You don't see really any weaknesses. Maybe he just improves on every area where he's already awesome. I mean, he feels generational, and this feels historic. And BYU, whether it's intentional or not, whether or not they saw around corners is irrelevant, because they've built a staff, Sean, that is different than every staff in college basketball, where the head coach was a high-level NBA coach who interviewed for several NBA jobs. His bench has 2 former G League head coaches on it. Their strength and conditioning coach came from the NBA. Their nutritionist was with the Suns. It is a professional coaching staff. And obviously their collective's in order, because the reports are he got $7 million for 5 months of basketball. And if you're a Utah fan, you're looking down at this and you're going, well, how do we compete with that? Which is tough to do. But just give me your thoughts on that dynamic before I set you loose.
Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, you're right about all those things. And you heard him in that interview say exactly what you just said. They've got an NBA coach. They've got an NBA strength coach. They have an NBA nutritionist. It's a good sell. Like, no one else, I don't know of anyone else doing that. My hope is this, as a Utah fan. Calipari said it this year when he moved. He said, I can't win with freshmen anymore. And that may be true because of COVID, and you've got these super seniors. But my hope is that continues to be a difficult task, because they're going to bring in one and dones. That's just all there is to it. Now the question is, can you win with them?
Yeah, now Kevin's got to show he can coach. There's a little pressure. There's no doubt. All right, man. Appreciate the time. Have a great call tonight. And I'll just say let's hope it's a fair fight. How about that?
Yeah, same. We're excited to be here. Thanks for having me on, Spence. Nice to talk to you, man.
Sean Mooney, one of the nicest guys out. Played basketball at Utah in the 90s. Now you can hear him alongside Bill Riley on the call for Utah Men's Hoops. Utah men's basketball in Ames, Iowa tonight at a place where Iowa State does not lose. Hilton Coliseum. Iowa State has won currently 26 straight home games. That's the 4th longest active home win streak in Division I. Utah is a 16.5-point underdog. So we'll see if they can shock the world. All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Scott Mitchell joins us a little bit later on. But coming up next, we'll do some Jazz, some NBA with Tim McMahon. So keep it right here. Good day to have our guy on the show. Tuesday afternoon, an old friend is in town. Quinn Snyder and the Atlanta Hawks are here to take on the Utah Jazz. And Ben McMahon himself, Tim McMahon, the first hit in 2025. Timmy, happy Tuesday. How you doing?
Howdy, partner. Missed you.
Great to have you on a day like today. First, I just want to know your deepest and darkest secrets. What are the New Year's resolutions, and are we still on track?
They're the same old, and I'm already off track. So we'll see what we can do to get back on track.
Makes two of us. All right. Weird question. You're used to it right out of the gates here. How should Jazz fans remember Quinn Snyder as he's in town here coaching the Atlanta Hawks tonight?
I mean, I think they should remember him fondly. He took over a total rebuild. He helped build that franchise up to the point where we can debate the semantics of contender, but a team that was a number one seed, a perennial playoff team, a very good team that just couldn't get over the hump. And then, the ending wasn't the smoothest thing ever. But honestly, it was time. It was time for that chapter in Jazz history to end. And it was going to end whether Quinn decided that he was leaving or not. So I think there should be nothing but cheers for Quinn Snyder. I do have a confession. Have I told you the Quinn Snyder, Sally Jesse Raphael story?
No, and now it's all I want to hear. Go ahead.
Okay. So, when I say Sally Jesse Raphael, do you know what I'm talking about?
100%. 100%.
Okay. So Quinn did not know that people referred to the red frames as the Sally Jesse Raphael until my big mouth slapped it to him in Vegas. And he was mortified. This was at the NBA Cup. I saw Quinn in Vegas at the NBA Cup. Quinn. You know that look that Quinn gives, right? Where his eyes just shoot up and he could not believe that it was something that was a discussion point. And he was like, I don't want to do anything extra to bring attention to myself. I'm never going to wear those again. I was like, come on, Quinn. Sure enough, he's been in the black frame since. I hope maybe he'll let it go, but some folks in the Hawks front office thought it was pretty hilarious. So did their PR staff. Their PR staff pulled me off to the side the next day and said, yeah, we kind of made a conscious decision not to fill him in on that one. And sure enough, I opened my mouth and so much for the Sally Jesse Raphaels.
And knowing Quinn, he will not let that go. Okay, I think.
No, when he didn't wear them the next game, I was like, all right. And then I check in and obviously when I turn the Hawks on League Pass, it's one of the first things I try to see is he in them? Is he in them? Nope, it's been those boring old black frames. And I'd like to apologize to the super nerdy NBA fan who notices that sort of thing, because I think I screwed it up for everybody.
That is hilarious, because I was honestly wondering why he stopped wearing them, and I did not know it was because you decided to openly mock him in front of people that he works with. Oh, that's great.
I meant it as a sarcastic compliment, but I truly did enjoy the Sally Jesse Raphael.
And I know the look, and mostly I know the look because I saw that look every time Andy Larson asked him a question.
Andy is definitely familiar with the look although there wasn't scorn for me. Every once in a while, Andy would draw some scorn. There wasn't scorn for me, but there was definitely he was shocked and not thrilled.
Yeah, I mean, Will is pithy and sarcastic and dismissive, but Quinn will look through your soul. And
yes, he will.
There were nights where I'd be like, Andy, you might want to leave early, dude. I don't know that you want to be walking on the street if Quinn's leaving. I wonder if you've noticed any, because I've shared this anecdote several times, and I actually talked about it with Frank Layden a couple of weeks ago, who was on the show. When Quinn first took the job, I didn't know him well, and Hubie Brown, my guy, was in town to call a game, and I knew Hubie a little bit, for just kind of being in the business or whatever, enough to say hello and ask him questions, and he's always very gracious. And I asked him about Quinn. I said, I know it's early. It's his first year. Seems really sharp, really bright, really organized. What do you think? And Hubie said to me, oh, he's great, but he'll probably burn himself out in 6 or 7 years. And it took, I think it took 8. I think it was 8 full years on the bench. And look, there are several reasons why he elected to leave and take some time off. But, I'll exchange a text with him here or there, but I don't see him and talk to him the way I used to. Have you noticed any growth as he's taken on this new opportunity? Or do you feel like this is going to be another, like Quinn's going to burn the candle on both ends and maybe find something else to do in 7 or 8 years?
Yeah, honestly, man, I think that that Quinn only knows one way, and that way does not include a lot of sleep. Like he's going to work around the clock. Quinn's a maniac.
Yeah,
he's a maniac genius, and that's just the way that he's going to go about things. Look, he took on a challenging job too. If he'd have taken my advice, he probably would have waited and waited out that summer and kind of been had a choice of some gigs, but he took. Really the first job that came open. Remember, that was a midseason hiring in Atlanta, and I didn't see a whole lot of promise. I didn't see a whole lot of potential. To really the credit of the front office and to Quinn, they have put together a really nice young core. And, I think this is where Quinn is kind of like just in his element when he's developing, he's putting something together. He's building something up. They still have challenges in terms of future picks. Or being, out the door. But I think he's invigorated by being able to work with, Dyson Daniels. I mean, he was absolutely adamant, hey, if we're making this trade, we have to get Dyson Daniels. Jalen Johnson, who, people are starting to figure out is really one of the great young players in the league. A couple other young guys on that roster. But, is Quinn going to be a guy who lasts one place forever and ever? I'm not sure about that, but I do think he's enjoying kind of the opportunity and the challenges that he has right now with the Hawks.
Systematically, is it kind of the same deal that he ran while he was here? I mean, obviously, a lot of it is catered towards the personnel you have, and Trae Young is a ball-in-hand guy, Donovan's certainly a ball-in-hand guy, but they're different players. Is this team tonight going to be running a system the Jazz fans are familiar with because it's Quinn's system, or is it a little bit different based off the personnel?
I think that Quinn's system is like the great coaches don't fit players into their system. They fit a system around the talent that they have. Why were the Jazz such a heavy pick and roll team? Because that played to the strengths of their best players. That played to the strengths of not just Donovan Mitchell, but especially Rudy Gobert. I think it is similar with the Hawks, just because Trae Young is one of the best pick and roll playmakers in the NBA. Capella's not the springy guy that he used to be, but he's still a capable finisher, a Kongwu, those sort of things. So I think there's similarities, but like I said, I don't think that Quinn would run the same system if he was coaching 30 different teams. I think that he would certainly adapt and tweak and maybe even bring in completely new chapters of a playbook based on his circumstances.
Yeah, no, that's well said. It'd be interesting to kind of see how this rolls tonight. Now, the Jazz have been a little bit better as of late. And, the name, Tim, that's kind of really making the rounds because of a couple of games of just elite shot making is Bryce Sensabaugh. And, they're sitting a lot of guys like we knew they would, and Will tends to maximize whatever talent he has at his disposal. They go down to Florida, and they take care of a Heat team that's a little bit dysfunctional right now, and a Magic team, unfortunately, after that great start, just can't get healthy, and it doesn't look like they'll be healthy for a while. So no one's hanging banners, but Bryce's shot making over the past few games is something we haven't seen before. Is there a chance they may have found something? Because ultimately their walking line was to, get back into the end of the first round, decide to make that pick was because Bryce was available, and most of that is because he was an elite shot maker and scorer at Ohio State, and it's taken some time to manifest. Could this be a player that maybe we haven't paid enough attention to?
Well, first of all, you say nobody's hanging banners, and if they take my encouragement, they will absolutely hang a Florida State championship banner tonight at halftime.
Don't tempt us. Don't tempt us, Tim.
Listen, you earned that. By the way, that Magic team that's completely gutted by injuries went up and won at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, they did
last night.
Yep.
So, but as far as Sensabaugh goes, look, these young guys, at some time or another, they're all going to have significant opportunity, and obviously the Jazz are looking for guys who take advantage of that, looking for guys who pop. And since Abba clearly has been popping recently. And, as you mentioned, like his hope to be to have a nice, long, productive NBA career is he's got to be a bucket. Like he's not a super dynamic athlete. He's not, going to be some kind of lockdown defender. Can he be a big-time bucket getter? And it's flashes, but that's what you want to see from these young guys. You want to see flashes, and then you want to see those flashes kind of form in a consistency. So, step one is the flashes, and he's had some big-time scoring performances lately.
Yeah, and he's a pure shooter when he can get a shot off. If the defense isn't paying attention to him, I mean, he really does have a chance to get buckets and score points, which is he has over the past couple of games. And we'll see who they play tonight. We'll see who the Jazz elect to play moving forward. But one of the things that we continue to monitor here, anytime somebody over at your spot at ESPN or The Athletic or whatever decides to talk about the trade deadline, the Jazz are inevitably brought up. And one name, Tim, that I keep hearing, and maybe it's just, I don't know. I feel like there's this thing where maybe media members in other markets see a player here playing well, and they're like, oh, we could get him. I just keep hearing that Danny and Justin are taking calls about Walker, and I just can't really wrap my mind around it. I don't know. Everybody's tradable, okay? I'm not saying there isn't an offer out there for Walker Kessler, but based off of what we've seen this year and his age and how much they like him, I don't know that I'd even take phone calls on him right now unless somebody's going to blow my socks off.
I mean, you take phone calls, but those phone calls end pretty quickly unless somebody is making you the type of offer that you can't refuse. And look, the Jazz took a ton of phone calls on Walker Kessler over the summer, and obviously he did not get moved. There was a lot of interest in him. There was a lot of teams calling and trying to kind of buy low. He didn't get moved then, and the stock has gone up. Like, look, it's not a winning situation, but you have to be able to evaluate individual development and individual performance in those circumstances. And look, he's having a good year. I mean, he came back, and I remember, I think I told you this, when I saw the Jazz in preseason here in Dallas, the first thing Will Hardy said to me was, wait until you see Kessler. He had a great summer, and I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And, hashtag muscle watch, but the guy was clearly in the weight room all summer, bulked up, and it's good weight. I think he was able to kind of a summer away from it. He went to Summer League, but, not Team USA and all that kind of stuff with the World Cup. I was able for him to kind of refresh mentally, and he's done everything that they were hoping to see from him this season. I'm not saying there's no way that he's traded. I'm saying it's going to be awfully pricey to even tempt the Jazz's front office.
At the risk of a Tim McMahon eye roll on the other end of the phone, and I know what that looks like, I'm just going to ask you this because we are in Salt Lake City, and we'll move over to other things. But the fact of the matter is marketing's numbers across the board are all the way down. Now, that's not, to me, any indicator that he's not the player that he once was. His minutes are about the same at 32. He's been incrementally held out here or there, but 19 points, 6 boards, all of his splits are down. I mean, is there anything there at all?
I'll be honest with you. I have not inquired with anybody in the organization recently about that. I would be surprised if there's a whole lot of concern. Honestly, he's a veteran guy. We understand what this season is for the Utah Jazz. I'm sure it's probably difficult for him to be dialed in on a day-to-day basis the way that he probably would be in a more competitive situation. I personally don't think there's any massive reason for concern, and like I said, I can speculate that there probably isn't within the organization, but I would be misleading you if I had told you I'd been asking about him a lot lately.
Fair enough. We had Haberstroh yesterday. We had Bontemps last week, and they both had different answers about how this Jimmy Butler saga will end. You don't mess with Pat. You just don't mess with Pat Riley. It's the wrong guy to mess with. And the weird thing is that if you're Miami, there's not a ton of incentive to move him. It actually might behoove them to hold on to him and let him hit free agency for cap flexibility. So like they don't have to do anything, but this feels untenable. He's been suspended, and there are a lot of rumors concerning some teams who you cover, like Memphis, and then other teams like maybe Golden State, Phoenix, potentially Milwaukee. Just give me your best guess. How do you think this thing ends with Jimmy Butler?
I mean, it's intentionally untenable. Like Jimmy has accomplished his short-term goal of making the situation as uncomfortable as it could possibly be. I don't think that Pat Riley and the Heat are going to be bullied into making what they would consider to be a bad deal. At this point, would they make a neutral deal? You know, would they make a deal where they're getting some sort of draft capital and no long-term salary? I think they do that because I think it has reached a point where they're just like, hey, let's just get rid of the headache. Which again, that's Jimmy doing exactly what he set out to do. There's a long time till the trade deadline. I would lean towards them probably figuring something out. And look, if they figure something out, maybe it's a 3-team, maybe it's a 4-team. You know, certainly the Jazz, I'm sure, are involved on the periphery of that, where maybe there's a way for them to kind of wiggle in there and get some sort of value, for the future. It's not going to be easy, though, for a lot of reasons. One, his salary. 2, his personality. 3, his age. For all the talk of he's definitely going to turn down the player option, I will believe that he turns down $52 million for next season when it actually happens. It's a complicated thing for many, many different reasons.
Tell me what you think Ja Morant what questions you think Ja has answered this year as Memphis is back to where we're accustomed to seeing them when Ja Morant is healthy. And look, I don't know if it's a real reclamation story, but as of now, nothing's hit the news, and they're a good team. And when he's in the lineup, he reminds us of who he is when all the noise is kind of blocked out. But you cover this team. You know the situation well. What is there anything you think Ja has said up to this point that is encouraging if you're a Grizzlies fan?
Listen, I think that the biggest question that he's answered is, can Ja Morant avoid, just shooting himself in the foot, metaphorically, obviously.
Indeed.
By doing dumb things. And it has been, fortunately, very quiet around him for over a year now. And that's including a lot of time where he had idle time. I mean, he was traveling with the team last year when he was hurt, and that was very intentional to keep him involved, kind of keep him in that team environment and focus. But I'm not saying that Ja is going to be getting his Weebo badges from the Boy Scouts or as the Cub Scouts, whatever it is, anytime soon. But there's not the rumblings that there were about him, a year and a half ago, 15 months ago. And so that's the biggest thing. If Ja stays out of his own way, he's going to have a chance to have a Hall of Fame type of career. Unfortunately, the other big question with him is about durability. That's, again, been a challenge. He's had a couple of pretty significant injuries so far this season. He's already not going to be eligible for All-NBA. But, man, that is a deep team that is difficult to prepare for. They do have a unique system among NBA teams these days. And if Ja and Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. are all healthy going into the playoffs, I think they will have a chance to make some noise.
What can you tell us that's the most recent take on just how dominant OKC has been? They've ran 15 straight off, and it's not just who they are now. It's what that front office has built them to be moving forward. As Bobby Marks, as we've talked about, released the draft capital rankings. The Jazz were 4, OKC is 1, and they've also won 15 straight games, and they're 30-5. Everything indicates they're a dominant team out this way. What's the latest Tim McMahon take on this recent run from OKC?
Well, first of all, cannot wait to watch Cavs versus Thunder tomorrow, and then I'll be live when they play again at OKC on the 16th. Both these teams are on 70-win paces. It's the first time we've had teams on that kind of pace, 2 teams, at this point of the season since 71-72 when it was the Bucks and Lakers, Kareem versus Wilt. That's some pretty heady company. So this is, I know Cleveland and Oklahoma City might not be the markets the NBA would have selected, but these 2 teams are awfully good. You're talking about the number one offense of the Cavaliers versus the number one defense of the Thunder. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, to me, it's a two-horse race for MVP at this point between him and Joker. He's unbelievable. He's does just scores 30-plus efficiently and does everything else that you can possibly want out of a superstar. But how dominant has this Thunder team been? Here's a stat for you. I'll even throw in the NBA Cup final, even though it doesn't officially count. They are 27-3 when they've had a 7-footer available for the entire game.
Yes.
3 of their losses, one came the night that Chet got hurt, which he got hurt in the first half. And then 2 of those other losses came during that brief little stretch when Chet was already out and Hartenstein hadn't recovered from his broken hand. I mean, they haven't had those guys play together for a single second yet. I mean, think about that. And by the way, Caruso hasn't played a whole lot. He's been dealing with a hip for a while. So they haven't had Chet for whatever it's been, a couple months now. Caruso's played a little bit. Those are 2 all-defensive dudes, and they are the number 1 defense in the NBA by over 3.5 points per 100 possessions. Oh, and then they've got an MVP, if not front runner, big-time candidate who scores 30-plus with remarkable efficiency on not just remarkable efficiency, but Shai very rarely has a dud game. He had one in the NBA Cup final. I'll give you that. Other than that, you can pretty much pencil in 30 on decent efficiency from him every single night.
And they're so fun, man. They're fun to watch, which is good for a league that's looking for teams that people want to latch on to that isn't their own team. Before I set you loose, since you brought up the Cavs, we started the show off with this. I mean, Donovan has shown some growth. He's playing winning basketball in a way that he didn't hear. He admitted in a piece with The Athletic that he's trying on defense now, and all of us were like, thanks, dude, but whatever. What are you willing to say about this 31-4 start? Boston is still the clear favorite everywhere, but what are you willing to say about how real this is with Cleveland?
Listen, man, 31-4, I'm not going to sit there and tell you that's a fluke. They just came through Dallas, and look, they were playing the Mavs without Luka and Kyrie, but there were times I was gasping watching that game just the way that the ball was moving. I mean, Donovan made some passes, and they're hockey assist type of passes. But he made some passes that I was like, whoa. And I had a good talk with Donovan afterwards, sat down with him for about 10 minutes or so before they left the arena. And, you look at just his counting stats, they're down. That's not, a coincidence, and it's not a bad thing. He's gotten over needing to, really kind of establish himself as a superstar. Or honestly, even worrying about status or this and that. The guy's at a point in his career where he just wants to win, and he recognized that him doing a little bit less, one, puts him in position, hopefully, to be much fresher come playoff time, to be able to finish strong, to be able to, to feel good physically for an entire playoff run. But it's letting Darius Garland really have some more rope and thrive. And, the thing that Donovan kept coming back to, though, as he said, Evan effing Mobley. Again, it might not show up necessarily in the numbers, but they feel like Evan Mobley has made a leap this year, and that has been just a massive development for a team that was a good team last year. It was a second-round playoff team, but wasn't a contender. There's no question they're a contender now. Can they beat the Celtics in a playoff series? I don't know, but I think it's possible. I don't know if they will, but they better be taken seriously because, again, you don't go 31-4 with a +12 net rating and have it be some sort of fluke.
That was an unbelievable hit, and the only thing I can think about is how badly I wish I was there standing next to you when you asked Quinn about his Sally Jesse Raphael glasses, because that must have been a moment to remember, man. But great stuff today. Be well. Travel safe. We'll chat soon, okay?
I do have great regrets now that we will never see the red frames again. I apologize to the NBA fandom for that.
There we go.
I appreciate you, brother.
All right, there is Tim McMahon, covers the NBA for ESPN, covers the Jazz for ESPN when the Jazz are worth covering, respectfully. At ESPN_McMahon is where you find him. Were you familiar with I guess now Tim spilled the beans. This was not public knowledge prior to. But Quinn Snyder, former coach of the Jazz, in town with the Atlanta Hawks to start the year, broke out these red framed glasses because Quinn, a couple of years ago, started wearing glasses. He wore glasses while he was here, but only to like read box scores. Didn't need them when he was coaching. And then I think it was last year, the start of this year, started wearing the red framed glasses. And folks on the internet started referring to them as the Sally Jesse Raphael glasses. But Quinn didn't know that. And so Tim, in all of his tactful glory, runs into Quinn Snyder in Vegas and asks him about the Sally Jesse Raphael rims to his glasses. Quinn didn't know that people were saying that about him. Apparently, he was so mortified that since that interaction, he's only wearing black-framed glasses. Were you aware of this dynamic, or are you just learning in real time?
I had just heard about it, but I also am a little lost on it. That's like the only time I've seen those glasses. Is she the like tabloidy, like Jerry Springer-y lady?
She's a talk show host? I never
Yeah, okay.
I was never like cramming Sally Jesse Raphael episodes. I don't know much about her.
But yeah, that's I saw them as Quinn Snyder glasses just as much as that. But yeah, I don't put it past Tim to make Quinn feel bad.
That hit got a little loose. He made a gun metaphor reference when talking about John Morant. Then he brought up the Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
Boy Scouts canceled, right? I believe they've been. Yeah. Aren't they?
In a large form. I mean, I think that got loose a little bit. So
you think?
Yeah.
I thought they did away. I don't mean to be insensitive. I just thought the Boy Scouts were very clearly problematic and are no longer a thing.
I think there might be like some sort of thing still going on. I had a good experience. I won the Pinewood Derby, even though I cheated.
Who didn't cheat? If you didn't cheat in the Pinewood Derby, you weren't trying.
Exactly.
Everyone cheated.
And I won.
So did I.
Good for you.
I would have beat you.
I don't know about that.
That was the car, right? Pinewood Derby's the car.
Yeah.
What was the boat thing with the propeller on the string? Remember that one?
Kind of.
I would say I had a fine experience with Boy Scouts. Not like that. Everyone.
Are you an
down.
Eagle Scout?
No. Do you want to know why? Oh, my poor mother. Every time I talk about this, it just breaks her heart. I got every merit badge I needed by the time I was 16 years old. All I had left was my Eagle project, and I never did it. And my mom kept saying, all right, just your Eagle. Because my parents did the thing where they're like, hey, you're not going to be able to drive until you get your Eagle Scout.
Right.
But I knew, being the oldest of 6 kids, you need me to pick kids up from school. You're not keeping me, from driving.
Smart.
So I slow played it, turned 16. Mom's like, hey, what's the deal with the Eagle Project? I'm like, totally on it. Totally was not. Because I was so over Scouts at that point. I didn't like it. I didn't have any friends in Scouts. I thought it was weird. And sorry, the leaders are just like even the good ones, there's just this feel, you know what? I'm going to pivot out of this segment.
Okay.
Bottom line is this. I got everything I needed, and I didn't finish my Eagle Scout project. And so I finished, I believe that's life, right underneath the Eagles. So I'm a Life Scout.
Okay. I think lesser of you a little bit now.
Yeah, that's
after,
fair.
I thought you were an Eagle Scout.
No, that's fair. Are you an Eagle Scout?
We'll move along.
You're not an Eagle, are you?
I'm not an Eagle Scout, but
right.
I mean, come on. I don't need to be. You're from Connecticut.
Exactly. Thank you. I don't need to. I know how to tie 2 or 3 knots. I'm good. That's all I need.
You can start a fire.
I always felt like Eagle Scouts, they're like golfers. Have I told you my pro golfer theory?
Mm-mm.
There's no such. Every golfer's a nerd. Every single golfer's a nerd. And most Eagle Scouts are goobs. Didn't have friends, didn't have social activities, or their parents just made them get it. So Eagle Scouts, golfers, they're all nerds. Give me one cool golfer exception.
Man.
I would allow you Ricky Fowler, but he's even a little bit of a goob. If you've ever heard him interviewed.
No, he tucks his ears into his hat, dude.
Well said. And golf apologists would be like, dude, Tiger's cool. I'm like, are you kidding?
Oh, no, Tiger's a nerd.
Tiger
he's
is
cool,
a
but
nerd.
he's a nerd.
Look, nerd, I'm not using it as a bad connotation.
No.
Nerds run the world. Okay? They own companies. A lot of them are great golfers. It's not a knock, but they're like no cool golfers. John Daly, maybe, but that's just because he's a lunatic.
Right. That one's like a outlier extreme. I will say this only because I know him. Mark O'Meara is like the most normal dude you'll ever run into.
Cool dad energy?
He just like a dad that fly fishes and snowmobiles and happens to have a green jacket. You would never know that was his past career.
What a great life.
Yeah.
I want to come back as... Oh, you know what? I actually watched a documentary because I couldn't fall asleep last night because, that's just the deal with your guy. On the 2008 Ryder Cup, And Kenny Perry seems like a cool dad energy, like golfer guy from Kentucky. So I'll offer Kenny Perry. But golfers are nerds. Eagle Scouts nerds.
Yeah.
And I think the Boy Scouts are canceled. I'm just saying that hit from Tim got a little loose.
Generally, yeah.
We'll catch a break.
Let's do that.
All right, more coming up. Don't go anywhere. Feels like you may have played this bump intentionally based off of how loose last segment got. Is there anything there? Am I reading too much into it?
I guess I could have, but it wasn't intentional. Just some Allman Brothers.
But which song?
I'm No Angel.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
But yeah, not enough Allman Brothers. And this one is not listed. It's just listed as Greg Allman, so I didn't know that we actually had it.
All right. Well, Greg did some solo work. Love me some Allman Brothers, as you know. Yeah, we got a little loose last segment. Do we need to apologize to the Boy Scouts of America after last segment? Or
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we traversed a little bit of a loose space, but I think I did a decent job of exiting stage left, got out of the situation. Tim McMahon joined us last segment to talk a little Jazz Hawks. How will you remember the Quinn Snyder era here? I mean, you were at a lot of those media availabilities, and Tim told a really funny anecdote where he was in Vegas and made a crack about Quinn's new glasses. And ever since Quinn heard Tim's crack, he's worn different glasses because apparently it hurt his feelings. And when Tim described the look that Quinn gave him, all I could think about is how often Quinn looked through Andy Larson's soul. Andy would ask Quinn a question, draped in the, of course, I'm smarter than everybody else, Andy Larson snark. My guy, love him. And I would be in the room, and you could feel the tension. And there were nights where I'm like, Andy, you got to get out of here, dude. You got to go home before Quinn has the ability to find you. But whenever I had a chance to talk to him, and whenever because it's crazy to think about this. Gordon and myself, we had Quinn Snyder and Dennis Lindsay on our show every single week during the Jazz season. And nobody gets access to players and coaches anymore, ever. I mean, the Jazz make them available for everybody a couple times a year, but as far as one-off interviews, nobody gets them ever. So I was fortunate enough to get to know him, and he really is a good guy. He really is a nice man, but he is maniacal. And I think he brought that team to the precipice of something as special as anything we've seen since the 90s. But you covered Quinn. How do you remember the Quinn Snyder years here?
Yeah, well, as you kind of alluded to, the one thing that you really can't not look at with Quinn is he's intense. He is one of the more I don't know how else to explain it, but intensity is how he addresses not just basketball, but like just looking at you in the eyes, right? It's something that you can't really escape from with Quinn, but I don't think it's necessarily a negative thing. I think it maybe snowballed at the end and added to the negativity that was surrounding the Jazz, right? But I don't think Quinn was ever the source of that. I think he's a really, really good basketball coach. I think he is a phenomenal schematic mind. And in game, I think he's really good as well. His out of bounds stuff, his adjustments during games. I think Quinn Snyder is among the better coaches in the league, but there is that side of him that you talked about while he was here. We talked about before he hung it up here at Utah, and we kept it at the front of Jazz fans' mind because we kind of saw it coming, and that was the fact that he operates in such a direct and like fervent way that you get tired of it yourself. Quinn does, right? And it seemed like he burned out in Utah, needed a reset, needed a little bit of a change of scenery, and has got that in Atlanta. I think a tough job that he took, as Tim alluded to, and is doing a pretty good job there as well. But if you give Quinn Snyder the right roster, the right staff, the right everything around him, I think he's one of the best coaches in the league. But that's part of this game, is that you could be a really good coach, and if you're not surrounded with the right pieces, or you're surrounded with chaos, a couple off seasons ago here in Salt Lake City, it's just not going to work. And that's kind of how I look at Quinn Snyder's stint here. Really good on the floor, really good coach, and it ended partly thanks to his intensity, but it really was more the stuff around him.
Yeah, and a lot of this stuff is anecdotal, and I'm always the guy that chuckles at the narratives we create around teams and coaches and players after they start winning. Oh, the culture, they're an extension of the head coach on the floor. No, they're really talented, and they're working hard, and they're finally getting results, and they're just winning. But that's boring media fodder. You have to come up with superlatives and hyperbolic takes. But one of the things I always loved is the way that Quinn seemed to allow his players to be themselves and express themselves in a very free way. While he appeared to be kind of a rigid dude, the Clarkson stuff is the biggest example. Like, Jordan Clarkson has always had tremendous talent as a pure bucket getter off the bench and other stops, the Lakers, the Cavs. But his best years as a pro was the 2 or 3 years he spent playing for Quinn, where he won Coach of the Year. And Jordan was playing he always plays free, but he was playing in a way that I had never seen him play before, and playing within the team framework in a way that I'd never seen him play before. And it felt like Quinn really had a hand in that. And certainly Quinn was always good to sit down and take the time to kind of inform you what they were trying to do and the foundation they were trying to build early on and how he hoped it looked when it was fully baked. And, I think the debate will always be best Jazz team that was not John and Carl, certainly in the mid to late 90s. But, of course, they laid the foundation all the way back to the 80s. I mean, John and Carl and that group worked to build something special for a number of years, something I think we forget when we talk about, well, Donovan was here for 5 years. That's long enough. No, it's not. Like, you have to build a foundation. You have to build something sustainable and something that lasts. And it takes a lot of time. And we have not seen it take very much time in this market, which has led us to being spoiled quite a bit with intelligent basketball decision makers and ownership that, the previous ownership who had hired good people, put them in place and let them do their jobs. Let the basketball people do the basketball things. Let the coaches coach the basketball team, and let the front office decide who the players are. And the synergies, more often than not, worked at a really high level. Never got to a championship. But you could watch, and I covered Quinn for the entire 8-year stint. You could watch and see what they were building in a way that seemed a little bit more intentional, and I would say further along than what this iteration and this Jazz group is trying to build. Remember, this is the third year of a rebuild, okay? Let's not get it twisted. This is year 3 of a rebuild, and I'm not sure the Jazz fans see anything extra exciting about what the future could hold. And year 3 of the rebuild with Quinn and Dennis and that group, that's when Mitchell took off. That's when Gobert was legitimately Defensive Player of the Year candidate. And that's when you could see, okay, they've been building and building and building. And yes, is there some luck involved? Of course. And it would be nice if Keontae was better in year 2, the way Donovan was better in year 2. And it would be nice if some of the younger players had taken better steps moving forward, but that hasn't happened yet. Doesn't mean it won't happen, because, again, this is a foundational build. Right now, what the Jazz are doing, simply building the studs. They're building the foundation. They're building the first portion of what hopefully turns into a great project once upon a time down the road. I don't know how many years it's going to take. Again, they're already kind of behind the 8 ball. If you compare them with other rebuilds, after 2-3 years, you do want to see more progress. You do want to see things that are a little bit more tangible, as opposed to a couple of games where Bryce Sensabaugh hit some shots, and it's like, okay, is Bryce now awesome? I mean, it's hard to tell because of all of the players that have been held out, the ups and downs of a long 82 NBA season, but should be fun tonight. By the way, I have a new favorite college football player. Did you watch the FCS championship game last night?
Of course.
How about that guy, Tommy Millott? Now, they lost, right? But he is fun. And look, I'm not going to do the thing. I'm not going to be the guy that's like, bro, I was crushing Montana State film all year. I wasn't. I mean, North Dakota State wins it all the time, so everybody knows that that's a hell of a program. But Montana State, North Dakota State last night, the game was on our station, went home, not a whole lot on, flipped through some NBA, and then I flipped it over in time for Montana State to have, who, by the way, had not lost a game, to make that comeback. That little quarterback's fun to watch, man. He's built like a linebacker. He's built like a tailback. I don't know if he's an NFL guy, but he won the Walter Payton Award.
Right.
So I was kind of reading up on him. He's a Butte, Montana kid. So he had all of these people from his hometown, like, showing up at bars in Butte to watch this thing. They call him Touchdown Tommy. And I listened to some interviews. You know what it reminded me of, Porter? It reminded me of one of my favorite things about watching March Madness is seeing this podunk school come out of nowhere and learning about, like, their starting guard who averages like 28.
Right.
You'd never heard his name before, and suddenly you're watching, and Was it Jack Golke, the dude who looked like an insurance salesman who hit like a million threes
I think
last
so.
year?
Yeah.
Like stories
Something like
like that are cool. And I felt like that learning about this Tommy Mellott kid. I mean, he exudes Montana State, tough kid, has some fun personality, was celebrating a little bit. So I was introduced to my new favorite player in college football. It's Tommy Mellott.
I love it.
Will you get him on the show?
I can reach out to the Montana State folks.
I'm serious, by the way.
And I'm with you on that. And it goes for both sides, right? North Dakota State, although they've received a lot more attention because they win the national championship every year. Those, and especially the top, I want to say 3 or 4 teams in FCS have almost found themselves in such an advantageous spot at the top of that specific classification that they are recruiting players that are Division I caliber, that are in a lot of situations potential pros going on, right? And that's something you didn't used to see at the FCS level. So, yeah, man, it's fun to learn about these guys and to get those kind of Cinderella-ish stories. But at the same time, when you see North Dakota State, when you see Montana State, these teams that just run the table in the FCS, they got some real players, real football players who have a shot at making money doing that thing.
Yeah, that kid was fun to watch. Now, of course, every time now we think of Montana, it's got to be Yellowstone. And I know you're still bitter that you got cut after you auditioned to be an extra in Yellowstone. But I don't
Very
think
bitter.
Have you did you finish the series?
No.
Did you were you boycotting it because they cut you?
I never really watched it, to be quite honest with you.
But you tried out to be in it.
I mean, I did some stand-in filming that wasn't used. This is correct.
All right, that's messed up.
But yeah, I never really got into the Yellowstone thing. I don't know. I think I watched a little bit of the first season.
It was, I would say it's worth watching. It got really dramatic as it went on.
Right.
It did improve after they killed off Costner because Kevin Costner's been in some legendary movies. But the overacting with him has always just rubbed me the wrong way. So after they killed him off, spoiler alert, if you don't know by now, sorry. The final season's come and gone. I actually thought it improved. I think a lot of people wanted Costner back because he does play that cheesy cowboy role pretty well.
That's probably what, gets me is that I can, and it's, not that I'm Mr. Cowboy, but I grew up with those guys who are actually doing that.
They're not cosplaying?
Exactly. So when Kevin Costner is cosplaying cowboy, it just doesn't resonate with me. I'm sorry.
John, it's been too long. I haven't seen him for not long enough, son of a bitch.
Right.
His accent,
it's too much.
Was wild. He went to meet a lady friend at a bar for a drink. She poured him a glass of wine, and he just downed it. She's
there
like,
you go.
You're supposed to sip it. I don't drink it for the taste. And
it's red wine.
It's like he put a coin down on the bar and walked out. This is so cheesy good. But if you haven't seen it, and if you're looking for some mindless entertainment, you could do worse than Yellowstone.
I would say I'll probably, and that's how I do most series anyway, is I'll probably binge it at some point just to give it its credence. Here's the thing. It has, and especially the first half of it, it was literally filmed where I grew up.
Correct.
So
yes.
I have watched some of it, but it was mostly just for the cinematic stuff. I'll catch up on the storyline at some point.
His accents, did you ever see the movie Robin Hood he did when he tried the British accent, the English accent?
I don't think so.
Oh, dude. It's how do you get greenlit for these roles? Do people listen to you try these accents? Was in some great baseball movies, though.
Hey, he's in some hits. He's in some real good ones.
Yeah, he made a little money. Not hating on Kevin Costner. All right, 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Scott Mitchell coming up next. I want to do some NFL with Scott. Well, of course, we'll do some Utah football. But I want to ask him about the Lions. He played in Detroit. What would it mean for that city if Detroit actually won the Super Bowl? Bell Frazier rolls by later on. We'll do a little Utah Hockey Club, and then we'll launch it in the 5 o'clock hour on a surprisingly sunny and beautiful Tuesday afternoon. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. Quick update about today on the show. The Boy Scouts have changed their name to Scouting America.
Okay.
So they're no longer the Boy Scouts, but they are around, and it's Scouting America.
Oh.
So,
all right. I think everything's good then.
I guess.
Right?
I guess. But, inquiring minds want to know. Scott Mitchell on a Tuesday afternoon. Scott, did you grow up in Boy Scouts at all? Are you an Eagle Scout?
I am an Eagle Scout. I actually have done public service announcements in the past for the Boy Scouts. If you actually type in Google search Scott Mitchell Boy Scouts, you'll see an amazing commercial back when I was playing for the Detroit Lions.
Porter, please.
It's a travesty, actually, to hear what you just said. Scouting was an amazing part of my life, and I absolutely loved it, and it's not what it used to be.
I didn't know any of that. Porter, all I want you to do is get the sound from Scott Mitchell's Boy Scout commercial before the end of the interview. Let's see if we can fire that up. So
you better be careful, Spence, because you'll be in tears. It's an emotional, powerful message.
I can't wait to hear it. I need to be motivated in the new year. Scott, I'm just looking for somebody to motivate me. If that's you talking about Boy Scouts, I have no judgment. That's fine with me.
Oh, I can motivate you, Spence. Give me 10 minutes. I'll have you running through a brick wall.
I need it. I want it. Have you been traveling during the holidays? Where have you been? It's been a while.
Yeah, I've been everywhere, man. I actually went to the German Christmas markets. I was in Florida. Where else? I don't know. Just pick a place. I've probably been there.
Oh boy. Well, Happy New Year. Even though Larry David said I'm not allowed to say that after, January the 4th. I haven't talked to you in quite some time, so I want to welcome you in and say Happy New Year. Do you have any exciting New Year's resolutions you want to motivate us with, huh?
I'll tell you the best advice that I could give a person, and that is see the end of 2025 and who you want to be and where you want to be, and just see the vision of that, and that should push you through the whole year. You got to start with a vision. That's the biggest thing, and the vision will actually push, the tasks. So like. If you want to be healthy, it's like, well, I got to lose weight. And so you got to see yourself as that like person now. And without that vision, you have no hope. You got to have a clear vision, a goal, and you have to see yourself there already.
Well said. No, I love it. I'm ready. I'm ready to roll. I've been needing this in the new year. What does your vision say Utah football will look like come fall?
It's kind of sad because I don't think this team was really that far off, and it just really not having a veteran quarterback hurt the team a lot. The defense played quite well, and there really wasn't a team on Utah's schedule or in the conference that you go, I mean, that's a world beater. Who would have thought Arizona State would have represented the conference in the playoffs? I don't think anybody did, including Arizona State. I don't think they believed. They probably just went through the year and it just kind of unfolded. But so you don't have to panic. You're not that far out of it. And I think the one thing that Utah's done different from years past, and it's something that they'll probably have to do moving forward, is get into the portal and get in the NIL game. And you can see other teams have had huge turnarounds from this. They did a pretty good job of not losing too many guys, because a lot of their guys, people are going after. Spencer Fano and some of those other offensive linemen. Keanu Tunavasa was a loss. Cam Calhoun was a loss, but for the most part, he did a pretty good job. And so if Utah can be a little bit more explosive on offense, a lot more explosive on offense, they're going to be right in it again next year. And what's going to be different is the formula for Utah was find these guys that fit our program, fit our profile, and we'll develop them. And they've done a tremendous job, probably the best in all of college football, but they don't get that luxury anymore. Those guys that they've kind of been mentoring and developing, those are all the guys that left. All the backups left. And so you got to be able to have systems, plug and play, pretty simple. You're not going to be able to kind of create that building culture that you have in the past, but teams have proven. Arizona State's a great example. You get the right combination of players in the transfer portal, you're going to do well. Even Colorado, who was a doormat in its entire existence in the Pac-12, turned it around in a lot. Okay, Deion's one thing, but they went heavy into the transfer portal, and it just gives you a chance to really find talent. You got to create the right chemistry with the talent you find, but you can turn it around quickly.
Some good stuff in there, and actually a couple of things about the question I was going to follow up with, and that is, and there are a lot of programs like this. I was doing the impossible task this morning of trying to figure out what the Big 12 will look like next year, and I was digging into some K-State stuff, and Utah football and Kansas State football in a way, Scott, are very similar because they are recruit and develop. And the success in the past for both of these programs have come with second, third, fourth-year players. These are not programs that turn things around 1 year at a time with transfer portal additions because both their coaches believe in the same thing. So if I'm understanding correctly, do you think it's time to look at a different approach because maybe the old school recruit, develop, win with year 2, 3, 4 guys is no longer a reality?
Well, you have to, and that if you're a Utah fan, you probably should be excited about what's happened. The roster next year, I think, is going to be like 53% new players, more than they've ever had. And so, Utah's just not sitting on its hands and digging a line in the sand and saying, no, we're gonna, they're going, okay, we understand the game. And we're going to play the game, and we're at least going to give ourselves a shot. As far as the conference next year, I don't know that it's going to change. I don't know that it's ever changed. I mean, the Big 12 is always a crapshoot, and I think your smart move is whoever they pick not to win, that's who you want to ride, right?
Exactly.
That's the team that's going to do well. But what you have is you have a lot of programs that are trying. And I like that, and I appreciate that. Texas Tech went out and got aggressive. You see Arizona State really, trying to turn a corner, and so there's a lot of competition in the conference. And I think the Big 12 was massively underrated a year ago, and I think they'll continue to, get a little bit more love with what's going on. But I think Utah's put itself in a position to do well. I was thinking about this today, and it's kind of the question, but it's a little off topic. Everyone's worried about the playoffs. Did they get the formula right? Did they do? Is there too much rust? Is there? They pick these teams and they have these blowouts, and I don't think you should change it at all. And where you're going to have to change it is these conferences are so big now. There's going to be 4 teams in the conference next year. Utah's not going to play. And they may be good teams and they may be bad teams. So you just get the luck of the draw every year. Do you get the good teams you're going to have to play or the bad teams? Because you take a team like Indiana, and it's the same in the Big Ten. It's the same in all the conferences because they're so big. So Indiana probably played a bunch of garbage teams all year. Maybe they weren't really that good. And they kind of just got the right draw for the better schedule, and that helped them out. If you really want to fix it, have all these teams, they all have to play each other in their conferences, or you don't start ranking teams until maybe when the actual college football playoff ranking comes out, because it's a huge advantage if you get ranked high early and you have a crappy schedule, like an Ole Miss. I don't know how good Ole Miss was, but man, they were sure ranked high, and they rode that ranking through most of the season, even though they really didn't play anyone all year. And some of the teams that were supposed to be good, like the Alabamas, weren't. So it's a little misleading to have these subjective preseason or early season polls, especially in these conferences where everyone doesn't play everyone all the time. And if you wait, you're going to have a better idea of who the really good teams in the country are.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I've been using this line on the show the past couple of weeks because I'm just realizing really how new all of this is for anybody in the ecosystem of college sports, whether you cover it and talk about it like you and I, or you're coaching in it like Coach Witt, or you're playing in it, or you're an administrator like Mark Harlan. We're all experiencing this for the first time. And because of that, it makes it really hard to predict what it's going to look like even tomorrow, let alone in a few months. So I keep saying, like, I prefer to diagnose instead of prognosticate about what could be because it's impossible to tell. But when it comes to how Utah is, to your point, completely changing over the roster in 1 year, this is another new thing where we'll have to diagnose instead of prognosticate. But 41 new faces for a program, as we've already talked about, that's found its way through the world of college football with the ability to recruit players that aren't as highly thought of elsewhere and make them the best possible players that they can be. So what's a realistic expectation to be able to change over 53% of your roster, bring in 41 new players, and then have an expedited time frame to do the development because they've got to be ready to go game one in the fall?
You know, it really falls so much on coaching and coaching in that you've got to bring in new players. You've got to have your systems that really are kind of a plug and play. It's hard too because well, I hope this guy fits what we do, and so recruiting to what your system is, I think that's part of what was appealing with Jason Beck and bringing the quarterback from the Devin Dampier, because he knows the system, so that transition I think really helps with a new coach and with the new style of how everything goes, because the quarterback really is the guy that drives all of it. And if you get a quarterback that can make plays for you and do well, you're going to have a shot. And that's the biggest key. Like it's not even close to the impact the quarterback has on a game versus any other position on the field. It's not like, the same as it's significantly higher, the kind of impact the quarterback has. So it's all about coaching and getting that right quarterback. And I think Utah's headed in that right direction. And then that system really has to be, and I hate to use the word dumbed down, but it has to be one where, you can pick it up relatively quick, because the players don't have that many practices. They don't have that much time to actually work on. The NFL have OTAs. They spend a whole season in the off season learning and perfecting. And you hear these teams that do well, and they'll tell you that the OTAs are what makes their season, what makes them successful. Maybe that's one of the changes that has to happen from this is like, all right, if you're going to give us all these new players every year, we got to have more time with them. And that's hard too, because all these coaches are out recruiting. So it's a real burden on a team, but the savvy teams will be the ones that find that right quarterback and the system to really give you at least a chance,
All right. Let's see here. I want to move over and do some NFL, Scott, because actually, you know what? I had one more Utah question for you, because I realized when I saw you on the rundown today, I have not interviewed you since the news broke that Kyle is coming back, that Coach Wood is coming back for year 21. And it was one of those things that we had all debated all year long. And one of the things we would debate is whether or not the outcome of the season would have any bearing on what Kyle decided to do. And part of me believed the answer to that was no, because the man does not need to prove anything to anybody. His resume speaks for itself, and what he's done for Utah football speaks for itself. Now, there does appear to be a faction, whether you want to call it the vocal minority as opposed to the silent majority. I don't have a percentage on it, but I have heard from people and have talked to people that believe it's time now to implement the succession plan, and it's Morgan's time to go. I can't speak to it. Like I said, I'll diagnose, I'll not prognosticate, but I haven't talked to you since Kyle decided to come back. Were you surprised? What was your reaction when you heard the news?
I don't know that I was surprised completely. You try to gauge people's answers or their mode or their temperament, because we interviewed him every week and talked to him, and you're trying to read, are you just worn down because this has been such a crappy season, or are you just kind of worn down because it's over? And I didn't really sense from him like he didn't have that fire or that competitiveness or that he was like, I'm kind of done. And I think that was, I don't even think maybe this would be the last year for him. I just don't. I still think there's gas in the tank. I still think there's fire in the tank. I think he's reading right what is going on with college football and where the program needs to go and what they have to do, and it feels like they're making that attempt to do it, because you never know how things will turn out. But at least they're reading the room right, and they're making those right moves. And and I just get a sense that it's not about, well, I want to end on a good note. It's, man, I just love coaching and I want to win, and I'm just still there, and that's where I think he is.
All right. I was excited when I saw that you were going to be on today because I had to kick the tires with you. You know, watching that Sunday night Lions-Vikings game, and this wasn't even a playoff game, okay? Like, it was a regular season game. But to watch and listen to some of the scenes around Ford Field, it felt like it was a Super Bowl for that fan base. And it potentially was the biggest football game held in that city in a number of decades. And we know the deal. You know, they have never won the big thing. They've never won the big.
Been to it.
They've never been to the Super Bowl. Of course, they've never won the Super Bowl. And I just needed to know, because your best years as a pro, they were in Detroit, and you had a love-hate relationship with the fan base. I think that's fair to say. But you have a unique perspective on the city of Detroit, the football fans of Detroit. What would it mean to them if Dan Campbell can traverse his way through the playoffs and actually win this thing? What would that city do?
The city would petition the NFL to change the Lombardi Trophy to the Dan Campbell Trophy. He has literally done a masterful job of mirroring and matching and engaging the fan base, and it's this blue collar mindset, and it's, look, we don't, we're really 3 yards in a cloud of dust kind of thing. We're tough, we're gritty, we're all these things. And I think what really helped Dan Campbell understand that is he played there. He played for the Lions, and he didn't play on some teams that were any good, but he's just done a masterful job of getting the city and the community to buy into him and his players. And he's got some great coaches around him, and they picked the right players who've done really well. And they've really done a great job of kind of fitting what they do into the players' strengths, especially Jared Goff. And he's just been, like, I'll tell you, if there's anything that gives you any indication of how great Dan Campbell has done, is they are actually chanting for and cheering Jared Goff. And that never, I don't care who the quarterback is, that never happens in Detroit. And so that city, like, literally, it would be the most insane change or celebration, or it could literally, you might have to bring in the military to calm that place down. Some of the most passionate, rabid, amazing fans, and they've been there. I've been back to games since I retired, and they have alumni times, or you go back and visit, and the team's terrible, and the place is packed. There's a badge of honor. And there's this a massive love for the Detroit Lions from Detroit Lions fans. I meet them everywhere. I mean, everywhere in the country, it's like, oh yeah, I'm a Lions fan. I live, whatever. And honestly, I would be so happy for those people. If there's ever a fan and a fan base that deserves to win a Super Bowl, it's the people they literally need to have the support and everyone in the country pulling for the Detroit Lions to win a Super Bowl.
Vegas, the up-to-date Vegas odds out of the FanDuel Sportsbook has Detroit as the favorite, currently heading into the wild card weekend. Kansas City is 2, Baltimore is 3, Buffalo's 4, and Philly is 5. Then there's a massive drop-off. Vegas essentially saying there are 5 teams they think can win it. So Vegas thinks they're the favorite. Does Scott Mitchell agree?
Well, you mentioned the craziness of the atmosphere, and to have that home field advantage all the way through the Super Bowl, they really play into it, and they feed on that hometown. It's a real thing, and I'm telling you, there's nothing more electric than a really fired up Detroit Lion fan base at a home game. It's as good as it gets anywhere in any sports, college or pros, and to have that, and for this team to. They've had a lot of injuries on their defense, and to still be playing well, and the quarterback has just been magnificent, and he's got weapons. This is a team that's capable, but they're capable in their brains too. They've been to a championship game, and they bounced back from that this year. Teams that kind of have the fatigue and they have a letdown from not getting to the Super Bowl or losing the Super Bowl. You kind of see that with San Francisco right now. But this team isn't. It's on the rise. Its belief level is as good as it gets. You know, Kansas City probably isn't as good as they've been in the past, but they understand how to win, and the Lions have figured that out as well. And the beauty of it would be to have to call a fourth down play in the Super Bowl, and they pull out the win on going for it on fourth down. That would just be the absolute irony of all ironies, just because of the riverboat gambler type of mindset that Dan Campbell has.
What about Baltimore, Scott? I mean, it seems like Lamar takes a lot of criticism for not being able to get it done, and he's so fun to watch, and he's one of the most electric, dynamic players in pro football. What's fair to say about what he's failed to do in the postseason, and do you think it could be different this time around?
Yeah, he's a really special player because, you know, he's learned to do both things very well, and it's almost indefensible. You know, he can throw the football very accurately and on time, and he's got a real comfort level with it. His mechanics have gotten cleaner, so under pressure, you know, he can still make the throws, and he's just unbelievable running the football. Their team, if I was in all the football and I was in the AFC or the NFC, that would be the team I'd be really afraid of. The other one's Buffalo. I mean, Josh Allen's playing great this year too, but Lamar Jackson is a very, very special player. And when you have that, man, it's so hard to defend. And it's so hard to figure out. And he's proven that, you know, consistently throughout the years. But he kind of has to get to that next level of winning that really big game in the playoffs. And it just takes time. You know, Peyton Manning lost 5 years straight in his first 5 playoff seasons. It's hard. Like, it's hard to win in the NFL, period. It's really hard to win in the playoffs, and it takes a lot. And sometimes it takes a lot of time. You know, I played with Dan Marino, he's just the best ever. Like, nobody throws the ball like Dan Marino. Unbelievable. And he went to 1 Super Bowl, and it was early on in his career, and he never went back again. So, you know, great players can have challenges winning in the postseason.
For sure. Before I set you loose, can anyone get in Ohio State's way? Or does it feel like they're going to march on and win the national championship?
It kind of feels that way a little bit, but you know, I mean, I know people are kind of disappointed with the college football playoffs, but man, the bowl games were meaningful, you know, and now you have Ohio State and Texas, and you have Penn State and Notre Dame. I mean, that's some pretty good, you know, semifinal games. I don't know how good either Penn State or Notre Dame. I don't know how good Texas is. You know, they seem to find ways to win. They're really good defensively. But Ohio State, it seems to be kind of their year.
All right, Scott, we have a very special treat before you hang up the phone. And for our listeners out there, we've had a kind of a loose show where Tim McMahon referenced the Boy Scouts earlier. So we've been asking our listeners their level of scouts. Scott is a proud Eagle Scout, and once upon a time, he voiced this emotional spot for the Boy Scouts.
What's it take to be a pro quarterback in the NFL? It takes effort. It takes determination. It's practice, even after practice is over. And for Scott Mitchell, it takes one really brave mascot. Scott Mitchell, proving just how determined an Eagle Scout can be.
Oh, is that it? We didn't hear from Scott? I thought Scott was going to tell like an emotional story.
No, Scott is for the non-YouTube listeners, pelting the Detroit Lions mascot with fastballs.
Right.
Oh, okay.
It's a video, right? And it's actually it's me throwing after practice, and I'm sweating and I'm working hard, and I keep throwing all these passes. The only one who'll catch them is the mascot because everyone went home. So
I see. Well, Scott, congrats on the Eagle Scouts, man. Eagle Scout Award. I appreciate the time. Let's do it again soon, okay?
You got it. Thank you.
All right, Scott Mitchell, former Ute quarterback, played in the NFL for a number of years. Yeah, I wanted to get his take on what that's going to be like. Can Detroit get this done? So ultimately, Detroit has been installed as the favorite to win the Super Bowl. This is new. The odds are out now. Prior to Wild Card Weekend, Detroit right now is your favorite, followed by Kansas City, Baltimore, Buffalo, and Philly. And then there's a massive drop-off between Philly and Minnesota. The Vikings are at plus 1,400. Essentially, Vegas is telling you 5 teams can win it: Detroit, Kansas City, Baltimore, Buffalo, and Philly. So, interesting stuff there. Appreciate Scott's time. All right, before we catch a break, let's welcome in Ryan from the Dish Pros. New year, new budget, save some money. Affordable options on your wireless, your internet, and your cable TV at 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan?
Vince, thanks so much as always. You know, this is a fun time of year for us, especially when the offers are sweet. And right now we've got a very, very cool offer with Dish. Guys, if you haven't checked out your cable bill, check out how much they did rate increases on your bill. And it makes me giggle because, guys, here's the time that you make the switch. Get a bigger, faster DVR. Don't pay more. Everybody's raising their prices across the board. And right now, even YouTube TV, that massive rate increase puts it equivalent to what it would cost to get set up with Dish. But here's the thing. You're going to see more price increases. And right now we've got a 2-year offer with Dish where the price stays the same. Plus you get a much faster DVR, much more fluid, easier to use. And guys, this DVR gets you the ability to keep your content as long as you want. It won't auto delete. Plus you can also have access to all the streaming apps. And guys, having YouTube TV and Amazon Prime and also Netflix built in as a main channels, and then also adding any other apps you're looking for. But let's make it sweeter. Let's throw in Netflix. This is the ad-free version, free for the next 2 years. Guys, this sweetens the pot even better. Call us up, make the switch. You're going to save money. You get a better system. DVR is 2 terabytes, 16 tuners. You have access to all your DVR content no matter where you go with the Dish Anywhere app. Plus, you can have access to streaming. So call us an upgrade, lower your bill, take advantage of this Netflix offer while I still have it, and we can have you installed for free as early as next day. If you call right now, I'll throw in dinner at JCW's. Remember, we're the only elite premier retailer in Northern Utah, so if you call and get set up with us, you'll get the best price guaranteed, plus extras on top of that. Call now, 424-DISH, 801-424-3474.
All right, there he is, Ryan from the Dish Pros. We're going to pivot and do a little hockey with our friend Belle Frazier from the Salt Lake Tribune coming up next right here on ESPN 700. Yeah, it's a great bump, but you can't bulldoze it. I can't come on air until it's fully unpacked.
You got to let it breathe.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great bump, but you have to let it breathe.
Just play the whole song.
Yeah, well, we should. We should at this point with this little radio show. We're going to get back to some football. College football, pro football, 5 o'clock hour. Don't forget Utah basketball tonight at Iowa State. They're a 16.5-point underdog. You'll hear that game when we say goodnight at 6. But let's talk a little hockey. It's been a minute. Our friend Belle Frazier from the Salt Lake Tribune back on the drive. Belle, happy Tuesday. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. So did you guys have a New Year's gathering at the Salt Lake Tribune building, and who had too many Furtas and embarrassed himself?
Who?
Was it Andy or was it Aaron? It was either Andy Larson or Aaron. Which one?
I don't know. We didn't have a New Year's gathering, so I don't have an answer.
Okay. Well, look at you protecting my good friends over the Tribune. Okay, I like it. We'll just kind of let it go. So, Belle, it's been a rough stretch as of late, but ironically enough, they haven't necessarily lost a ton of ground in the standings. But we're looking at 7 of 8 games on the wrong side of things over the past little bit for the hockey club. What would you attribute most the struggles of the past stretch with the team so far?
I think it's just the general theme of inconsistency that you really saw in the beginning of the year when they got off to that hot start, and then they're up and down, and that's kind of expected with a young team in the 4th year of a rebuild. And, we've talked about it, but Bill Armstrong always echoes, we're going to look like a playoff team some nights, and other nights we're going to look really young and really bad. And I think that's been true, but it's really unfortunate because to start December, they were on a 4-game winning streak. They won 6 of 7 games to start the month, I believe, and bleeding into late November. And then they go on and they lose 5 straight, 2 of which were against divisional opponents, which is basically a 4-point game when you're thinking about playoff implications. So that definitely put them behind the 8 ball. And just, momentum-wise, too, it felt like things were really clicking. They scored 4 or more goals in 6 straight games, which, when you're scoring that many goals a night in the NHL and you have good goaltending like they have had in Karel Vejmelka, and your defense is as stable as it has been recently for them despite the injuries, that's usually going to come out with a win. But recently they've really been held to, 2-3 goals a night, even 1 at times. So I think obviously the offensive production being down is a sign that kind of contributes to the losing streak as well. But I think they're coming in to this. They have a 7-game homestand at the Delta Center right now, a season-high 9 games at Delta Center this month. And although their record in Salt Lake hasn't been great this season, I think this is going to force them to learn how to make, home ice a tough place to play and a place where they gain points. Some people call January, February the dog days of the season, but it can't be that for Utah Hockey Club. I think if they go 500 this month, the playoff picture is going to be far, far away from what it is right now. So this arguably is one of their most important months of hockey until the end stretch of the regular season. So I think they all know that, and they know they have to handle business in the next few weeks if, they want to stay in the conversation.
As you referenced, Belle, they won 6 of 7 prior to this streak on the other side where they've fallen 6 of the last 7. And this is kind of the theme, as you referenced all year long, a team that starts out hot, a team that goes ice cold, then kind of ebbs and flows, wins some, loses some. So, but we should have enough sample size now that we're in the new year, and most teams have played over 40 games, around 40 games or so, to really get a feel for who they are. So the question I'll pose to you is when they're winning and when they're playing well, what seems to be clicking? And when they're on the wrong side of results, what are they not doing as well?
Yeah, I think when they're winning, they're playing simple. They're not overthinking or putting too much pressure on themselves. And, Coach actually talked about that, about the way his team plays at home. He feels like sometimes they get a little too emotional and they start, they let the opponent get under their skin a bit, and then they overcomplicate what could be an easy play, zone entries, angling on defense, just stuff that is bread and butter for hockey players that they know how to do. And Nick Schmaltz said that sometimes on the road, because you're in a different building, you want to take the crowd out of it. So you just go play a simplified game and you're not gripping the stick too tight and things like that. But I think Utah, when they're at their best, they're utilizing their speed. I would argue they're one of the faster teams in the league right now just because of their youth. And special teams are firing too. During that winning streak, they had 9 power play goals in 7 games, all from the first unit. And that's gone, a little bit not fully quiet, but definitely not that consistency either. And then I think for them too is just having 3 consecutive periods of the same, I don't know if effort's the right word, but of just consistent play. You know, they'll come out and they're usually a pretty good first period team. And then for some reason, the second period this season, they usually take a couple penalties, they give up a few goals, and then they put themselves behind heading into the third period. So I think in the games that they have success, you see them kind of carrying their play and not letting up in any of those periods. And they've been a better third period team, I think, in the last 20 games or so in terms of being able to come back. I think you saw that January 2nd against Calgary. They had a good third period and kind of being able to close games out. So you know it's in their arsenal, it's in their skill set. They've proven they've been able to kind of put those together, but it's just, you know, doing that on a nightly basis is what they need to do more often. We saw it for 4 or 5 games in a row, and now they really need it for the next, 15.
You referenced the situation with the goaltending stuff, and I would imagine it feels like Vejmelka has locked in the starting spot for now. Is that your understanding? I mean, based off of what we're seeing, that appears to be the case. And do you think that could change at some point where Connor gets the job back?
So Vejmelka is 100% the starter right now. I mean, his numbers speak for themselves, but I think just the calm confidence he gives his team, especially with, Utah's defense has done everything it can, and it's been good, but he does not have a healthy D-core in front of him, so he's probably making a few extra saves a night that maybe he wouldn't have to make if they had, full power on the back end. So I think that's part of it. Jackson Stauber, they called up from the AHL to be the backup. He's stepped in when he needs to for load management, but he's nowhere close to Vejmelka's level. And then Connor Ingram, he went out day to day in November, and it's been months. The latest update with him is they sent him down to the AHL on a conditioning loan, which means he has the loan is maximum 14 days, where he goes down there and basically just gets back into NHL shape in terms of practice, games. The AHL practices much more than the NHL because their schedule is a little bit looser. They practice for a longer time. Ingram hasn't played a game down there yet, but, he's allowed to on the loan. So I think that's a good sign in terms of where he is in his recovery. It means that, he's probably on the ice on a daily basis. We don't have eyes on him because their AHL team is in Tucson. But yeah, I think that's the question when he comes back. I don't think he's handed the net whatsoever. He's been out of commission for 2 months, and he didn't have a good start to the season. And maybe he was dealing with something injury-wise coming into it, but he really, really struggled. And I don't think it's a coincidence that once Vejmelka came in and gave them consistent play in net come December, late November, that's when they started playing their best hockey. So I think especially now when every night is so important for them in terms of points, you're not going to mess with your starter that is confident and giving you wins. So we asked Coach about it, of course, and he's focused on one game at a time. He knows Vejmelka is starting tomorrow against the Florida Panthers, and that's really all he's worried about. But I do think, maybe Ingram's the backup. They send Stauber back down, and it's good to have 2 veterans, but I just don't see them taking the net away from Vejmelka anytime soon if he's the one actively earning it.
All right, Belle, let's get to some topics you've covered in your space for the Trib. And anytime Spicy Tuna is in the news, we have to talk about it because he became the most popular player here instantly during their introductory press conference. And most people that didn't know hockey probably thought he was also the biggest star because he was the biggest name. He has not been able to get a ton of ice time to start the year, but that's changing, isn't it? Tell us a little bit about this opportunity that our guy Spicy Tuna has now in front of him.
It is. So, before their most recent road trip, Spicy Tuna, Liam O'Brien had only played 3 games, and that's coming off a season in Arizona where he played 75. So he was pretty used to being in the lineup on a nightly basis. But Utah, luckily, their forward group has been extremely healthy this season, which is extremely rare. They haven't had one injury so far, not to jinx it. Nick Bukestad was late coming into the season because he was recovering from injury, but nothing in season has happened to that group. So O'Brien was kind of just stuck as the 13th forward in a healthy scratch on a nightly basis. And I think a lot of us, media fans were talking about maybe wanting to see him in the lineup because the third line previously of Michelli, Bukestad, and Krause had not been producing as well just offensively. So maybe switching it up to get a spark there. And so be it. There was a stomach bug and illness going through the hockey club last week, and Clayton Keller could not go for a game. So O'Brien got put in the lineup. and he slotted in on that third line with Bukestad and Krause, and then has stayed in since then. He's played 3 games on that line with them, and Michelli was moved to the fourth line with Kevin Stenlund and Alex Kerfoot. But surprisingly, or not surprisingly, I guess, if he brings a spark, Krause scored 2 goals in his second game with O'Brien. He hadn't scored in 14 games, and he gets that monkey off his back. And O'Brien didn't get the assist on the goal, but it was his physicality and forecheck that kind of set it up. And then Michelli the next night scored 2 goals, and he hadn't scored since November 7th. So, Krause and both Bukestad said it the other day that O'Brien brought an energy, an element, an edge to the lineup that they think they were really missing, and it's worked out so far. So Coach said those combinations are going to stay the same this week because why, take him out if it seems to be working. But his mindset all year, Liam O'Brien, he's just said, I'm happy to be in the NHL. I'm going to stay ready. I'm going to be what this team needs for me to be. And he has definitely lived up to that. So who knows if this is a prolonged stint. I think they're just rolling with it because it got some of, the guys that they needed to get going scoring. But yeah, we don't have official lineups for tomorrow, but it seems like in this homestand, Utah fans will get to see Liam O'Brien on Delta Center ice, and he's fired up to be able to play in front of, fans that have shown him nothing but support since they got here in April.
How healthy are we getting with the blue line? It just seems like there's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and of course, some of the like Dursey and Marino were thought to be 2 key contributors. Are we close to getting them back? How healthy are we back there, and how close are we to getting some of the key contributors back to being on the ice?
This week has actually been really productive with that. Dursey, Marino, and Maverick Lamoureux have all been on the ice, which, we haven't seen most of those guys for the past couple months. Marino previously was in a non-contact jersey, but is now in a full contact jersey, full participant in practice for the last week and a half, I want to say. So he's not game ready. Coach said it's not going to be this week, but they're talking about it and it's coming. So I don't know if that means end of January, early February, but he's full contact. He's practicing and getting back into NHL pace. So I think that's a really bright sign for Utah. They never seen him playing a Utah jersey yet. He wasn't even at training camp because he was injured. And then both Sean Dursey and Maverick Lamoureux, they're not full contact yet. They're kind of on for short skill sessions, getting a feel for the puck, getting some conditioning in, and just being around the players on the ice before practice. And then they'll go do some side work. But same thing with that. We hadn't seen them skate in a while. So their weeks, probably a month at least for Dursey away, but that's a really good sign. So it's not going to be this week. It might not be in this homestand, but I think the fact that those players are integrating back into the team, integrating back into the routine of playing is a really bright spot. But then Robert Bertuzzo was put on injured reserve. He's week to week with a lower body injury. So, that's another defenseman you lose. So in terms of who they have coming up, it's kind of the same bulk of guys that have been carrying the load all season. But it seems like in the next few weeks, you'll get at least 2 healthy bodies back, which, is coming at the perfect time for this team as they try to make a push and could make a really big difference for them.
All right, Belle, before I set you loose, kind of a continuing theme on the show is to kind of gauge the interest of our local community with this new project and this new sport and this new team. And I haven't been to every game. I've been to 3, and I think opening night was probably not a level of passion that we could expect to see night in and night out. That's not a surprise. But as you continue to make your way down to the Delta Center to watch the Utah Hockey Club, how do you feel like the community is supporting the team? And how many of the jerseys or sweaters from the other teams are you seeing? And, it's still early. If, 1 of 2 things will happen for them to get support. They're going to be awesome right away, which is tough to do like Vegas was, or it's just going to take some time, and that's okay. But where are we at right now, January 7th, with this project, and how do you think the community is supporting the Utah Hockey Club?
I mean, there are definitely away jerseys at basically every game for warm-ups and things like that. I think for one reason is people want to see what's going on in Utah. They want to go to the Delta Center. They kind of want to be a part of the inaugural season. So I think people have, close teams have been traveling in terms of fan base. And also there's a lot of, Utah residents that were just fans of other NHL teams because they didn't have one. But that being said, I don't think they ever truly outnumber the amount of hockey club fans at Delta Center. And way I describe it, I think there's a core group of Utah fans that are, die hard. They care a lot, and we see it. We interact with them, and so maybe it's not quantity yet, but it's definitely quality. And the people that are there, they're loud, they're proud, and I think Brian Smith, he did a really cool thing for the past few games. He's been opening up the obstructed view seats that they usually don't sell, either for free or for $10, and it's basically sold out Delta Center. So that's been really cool, and it's usually a pretty packed crowd, no matter what. It's definitely not the level of atmosphere as, opening night or anything like that, but I think, you look back at last month, the overtime win against the Vancouver Canucks, that felt close to opening night. And I think fans are starting to understand the game more and the cadence of the cheers and that type of thing. So it definitely feels more like an NHL atmosphere. And like I said, the people that are there are doing, their very best to give these guys, the love and support that maybe they didn't have previously.
When do you think we're going to hear the name, the final decision on what the name of the team will be?
What we have been told is they won't announce anything until the season's over.
Gotcha.
So I think the earliest, even if they have it decided right now, the earliest that we will know anything is, I don't know if it's once Utah season is over or once the entire NHL season is over. So that's what we know about that. It's kind of the same as they've said all year, but it doesn't seem like there will be any breaking news on that in the coming months.
It's going to be the Yeti, isn't it?
I think that's what they're trying. I assume they said they want to go with what the fans want, and that won the poll. So, I think they're doing anything they can to please the fan base. And Yeti is what people want, so that'd be my best guess. But that's, based on limited information.
Okay. Well, Bella, I always appreciate the time. Keep up the great work, and we'll chat soon. Happy New Year, okay?
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right, Belle Fraser, Salt Lake Tribune. Man, she is good. If you're looking for Utah Hockey Club knowledge, you should definitely consume her work. She is a pro. She's at every practice, at every game. On Twitter, at Belle Fraser1 is where you find her. Of course, support our good friends at the Tribune. It's sltrib.com. All right, 5 o'clock hour comes your way coming up in a bit. We will say goodnight in time for Utah men's basketball. Utah at Iowa State. Utes are a 16.5-point favorite. Iowa State has won 26 straight home games. Let's hope for a fair fight. But let's bring in Ryan from the Dish Pros before we launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the drive, where you can save money on your wireless situation, your internet, and your cable TV. All you have to do is dial 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan?
Just call us up and let us put a bunch of money into your pocket. And, guys, these opportunities right now are so good. Listen, these new customer offers, they give you the reason to just get off your butt, pick up the phone, and call us. Guys, it's free money. This Netflix offer, it's worth $370+. You get Netflix free for the next 2 years. This is not the cheapo version. This is the ad-free version. You get this plus the great 2-year promotion where the price is guaranteed not to change. Now, keep in mind, with these rate increases, you're going to see $70 to $100+ a month savings between DirecTV and cable, and even savings if you're streaming. YouTube TV, guys, just did a pretty significant rate increase. One of the biggest ones that I've ever seen. Guys, and here's the thing, it's the same price as Dish, and it's going to be more expensive next year than Dish. And right now, if you get set up, you can get Netflix free for 2 years. You get a great system set up with the best DVR out there. It's much faster. Trust me, I've used both products. It's easier to use. It won't delete your content. You can keep it as long as you want. You have access to all your DVR content wherever you travel. You can even use it to, let's say, you travel to a hotel. You can plug a Fire Stick in and be able to access all your content there, including your DVR recordings. It's the most complete service out there. And here's the thing. Get set up. Take advantage of this Netflix offer. We'll throw in dinner at JCW's. Your price won't change for 2 years. We'll have you installed for free, and you start saving money. Call us up today. Take advantage of the deals. We've got great internet solutions, too. Packages low as $35 a month for fiber in some areas, $50 a month in other areas. If you're spending $70, $80 a month for fiber, you might be able to just pay a different provider and use the same fiber. And, guys, it's truly that simple. Same in the wireless world. Use the same cell towers you're currently using. Get a brand new iPhone 16 Pro or the new Samsung S24 for free, no trade-in, and spend $20, $30 per line less. And it's not that difficult, complicated. You call up, we'll port your number over for you, get you a brand new phone sent to your house in a couple days, and you're dialed up and you're saving money. People that take advantage of all three of these options, we see like $300 a month in savings. And this is not a little bit of money. Guys, now you're talking about almost $4,000. Like, it's just a crazy amount of money that you can save just by picking up the phone and calling us, and let us upgrade you. Take advantage of the deals. Call us right now. Don't wait. We'll set you up a dinner at JCW's if you call right now, 424-DISH. It's 801-424-3474.
There he is, Ryan from the Dish Pros. We got 3 hours down. We got 1 hour to go before we say goodnight for Utah basketball. It's Utah at Iowa State. And you can hear it right here on the drive on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. All right, what's going on? Drive at 5, time your commute home on a Tuesday afternoon / evening starts right now. It's been a pretty lovely day. The sun has been shining. It got up to about 42 degrees, and for a Tuesday in January, we will take it. Skies have been blue, so it's been a nice day. Hope you're off to a good start to your work week, and keep us here during the 5 o'clock hour. We'll take you home. We're going to make space for Utah basketball coming up. Bill Riley as well as Sean Mooney. Utah, Iowa State. Iowa State has not lost in Ames, Iowa for 26 straight basketball games. It's the fourth longest home winning streak in college basketball, and Utah is badly in need of a good showing. I don't know what's reasonable to expect tonight. Utah's first 2 Big 12 men's basketball games have been, not awesome is, I guess, how I'll land there. So I don't think a win is very reasonable for the Utes tonight. Of course, anything could happen in the world of college basketball, but with a spread at 16.5, can they make it interesting? Can they hang in down the stretch? So you're going to hear the game coming up in just a little bit as Craig is continuing to try to build this thing up to a place of respectability after a decent non-con schedule. First 2 Big 12 games have been rough. And, of course, this is an unbelievable conference. They went to Baylor, got smoked. They came home, played Texas Tech in Salt Lake, got smoked. Speaking of Texas Tech, they're going to be down in Provo tonight, take on BYU. BYU licking their wounds after they got dump trucked by Houston in their building. This is a bear of a conference, man. So we'll have a little men's college basketball action for you tonight. The Utah Jazz are in action tonight as well. They welcome in an old friend, Quinn Snyder, former coach of the Jazz for 8 seasons, is now here coaching the Atlanta Hawks. So, of course, nothing but fond feelings and memories for Quinn Snyder. I covered his 8 years here down at the old station, had him on my show every week, and was able to get to know him and lucky enough to call him a friend, and always will cheer for him. So we'll see if the Jazz can get a win tonight. They've won 2 straight games after going to Florida and sweeping both the Miami Heat and the Orlando Magic. We got a little Duke Pittsburgh tonight. Pitt is coached by Jeff Capel, who played his college ball for Mike Krzyzewski at Duke. By the way, the ESPN 700 cash kickoff is here. It's time for your shot to win $1,000 cash to pay your bills. Text THRILL to 508-777-1000. That's THRILL to 508-777-1000 for a chance to win $1,000 in cash in this nationwide contest. Good luck from those of us over here at ESPN. So, fun show today, lively show today. Obviously one eye ahead to the college football semifinals. Don't forget, we are your home of the best live football events in the market. You're going to hear the Cotton Bowl, Texas-Ohio State here on the station. Then, of course, the Orange Bowl will be Penn State-Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a 1.5-point favorite. Ohio State is a 5.5-point favorite. And I got to be honest, that line feels really low. I think a lot of that is because they're going to be playing down in Texas. Of course, University of Texas will have a ton of fans there. Ohio State, to me, is the superior team. I think we've seen that. Texas is going to have to withhold the start from Ohio State in a way that Oregon or Tennessee just couldn't. Hoping for 2 good games, then obviously the national championship on January the 20th. So college football kind of top of mind awareness. Done some Utah Jazz on the show tonight to get you this afternoon and tonight to get you ready for the game this evening as the Atlanta Hawks are in town. And, of course, the NBA world right now, curious to see what the situation will be with Jimmy Butler and when he will be traded. Will he be traded? Where will that situation unfold? Only time will tell. Some good NBA action tonight. Turner has the Lakers and the Mavericks on TNT. And then the late-night game is from Ball Arena. The Nuggets have been better as of late, but the Celtics are in town to take on Denver. Then, obviously, wild card weekend ahead in the NFL playoffs. Black Monday kind of turned into Black Tuesday. The Raiders have fired Antonio Pierce, leading a lot of people to believe that Deion Sanders may be contacted by the Raiders to take over that job, and will they draft his son? Of course, only time will tell, but a lot of coaches losing their jobs. A lot of coordinators losing their jobs. There's no update on Jalen Hurts and his health. He is in concussion protocol. The Eagles, according to essentially Vegas and the odds, are one of 4 or 5 teams that actually have a legitimate shot of winning a Super Bowl this year. But, of course, they need their quarterback under center. Looks like Jordan Love is fine. He's going to play, but Christian Watson has torn his ACL. He's out for the rest of the playoffs and probably the bulk of next year as well. 2 games on Saturday, Chargers, Texans, Steelers, Ravens, and then the Sunday slate is Broncos, Bills, Packers, Eagles, Commanders, and Bucks. Monday night game culminates with the Vikings and the Rams. Kind of a sneaky big one for Sam Darnold, who at this point appears to have played his way into either a franchise tag or a long-term contract with someone else. The Rams are actually an underdog at home. Minnesota, 1.5-point favorite. So the NFL playoffs rolling along. So, busy show. We had Sean Mooney on earlier to preview the Utah basketball game tonight. All right, Porter, I'm going to pose the question to you. As I referenced, Utah on the road tonight, Iowa State, is a 16.5-point favorite. The arena where Iowa State plays, I believe it's the Hilton Arena, that is a fortress. They have not lost there in 26 games. I don't think anybody's expecting a Utah basketball win tonight. But what's best case scenario? Is it close down the stretch? I mean, at this point, as we talked to Sean about earlier, I think all Ute fans are hoping for is to just see some sort of tangible proof that this thing is moving in the right direction. And the cruel honesty, I don't know how else to put it, is there really isn't a whole lot right now. They've had some injuries. They've had some sickness. They've had some players leave for personal reasons. I believe they're fully stocked tonight with the entire group. So best case scenario, outside of a win, which feels like really hard, you're essentially a 17-point dog. What would Ute fans see tonight that could lead them feeling into the night and then tomorrow that, okay, maybe some good things are happening with this team?
Cover that spread, maybe. I mean,
don't lose by 18.
They've lost their 2 Big 12 games, Spence, by a combined margin of, I think, 60 or so, whatever it is. It's between 25 and 30. And this is an Iowa State team that is not only 12-1, they're 12-1 with their one loss coming to one of the better teams in the country, in my opinion, in Auburn. It's a really, really good basketball team. And for Utah to go into specifically that arena on the road, I mean, it's just a really, really tall task to ask them to be in that game or to win that game. But if you cover the spread and if it's competitive into the second half, I think you feel better than you did last week, right? Against Baylor and the other matchups you've had. It just hasn't been anywhere close to good enough. So based on what we've seen so far, cover the spread, make it somewhat competitive, and I think you leave with a better feeling. Saying that out loud seems like a pretty unfortunate place for Utah fans to be, though.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of noise around Craig when it comes to Ute fans wondering why this basketball program. And you know what? If you really call it how it is, it's been 20 years, maybe even a little bit more than that since Utah basketball had like a consistent run. Not a 1 or 2 year spike period when Jakob was here or DeLon was here. Kuzma had a minute. Coach Kraskowiak did have a couple of really good teams. Luka Dircha, that team with Neville, they went to the I think that was a Boylan team where they went to the NCAA tournament as a 5 seed. I want to say they lost to Arizona round 1. Nobody gives a rip, but we have had these moments where it feels like maybe the basketball program is back headed in the right direction. And look, I've talked about this for years. It's unequivocally unfair to talk about the Majerus years as something that we could potentially see again. That feels like, one of those golden times of Utah basketball that was certainly enjoyable. I was in school at the University of Utah when Rick was the coach and, was friendly with a lot of those players, played with them, played against a lot of them, including Britton Johnson. They were a fun team to watch, and it was a fun time for Utah basketball. And, it's unfair to hold the program to a standard like that, but it's got to be better than it's been. And there is an element of this conversation to the chicken or the egg. Because, look, if you're a highly sought-after high school basketball player or a transfer that is looking for a new place to play, which, of course, is the reality of building a modern-day program, whether it's basketball or football, breaking news, you want to play in front of fans. I know that sounds old-fashioned, but I don't care. At whatever level you played at, whatever level you played, it was always way more exciting if you're playing in front of people. It's a different energy. And that building has not had juice in it for years, consistently. Like I said, there's always been moments here or there. And I'm not one to tell anybody what to do with your money, what to do with your budget. And I guess you can't go to everything, right? You've got to pick and choose. So would a healthy investment from the community change the trajectory of the basketball program? If everybody listening right now and everybody who loves Utah athletics just said, screw it, I'm going to every basketball game, and these young high school recruits or potential transfers, they visit campus and they go see, Utah's got some really fun home games this year. Of course, BYU, they'll have Baylor. They've got Kansas, they've got K-State, they've got ASU, West Virginia. There's some really good teams are going to be at the Huntsman Center this year. And if there's a high school recruit that comes to the BYU game, and it's BYU Utah, and there are a ton of fans there, and 60% of the building is not blue, and Utah pulls off an upset, is that a shot of adrenaline for a program that badly needs it? I don't know. I just know that if you're Craig, it's got to be really difficult to inspire kids to come play at Utah when they come to visit and they go see a home game and there's a handful of people there. I mean, I've been to plenty of them. Nobody goes. I wonder if that changes for the big games. And maybe this Big 12 inclusion can get Craig a little bit more exposure as a result of the opponents, and maybe you can parlay that into something. I have no idea. But I think it would help a lot. And I chuckle as I say this because if you show up and pack the building and you're loud and proud and you're supportive and there's juice, that would help the program. But at the same time, the team has to provide something for you to cheer for consistently and tangibly. And it's just been a while since the product has been good enough, consistently enough for the community to be overly invested. And I know there are conversations about whether or not the team gets the support they need. I don't know, man. I think that building probably needs a facelift. The concessions are not awesome. And certainly there are ancillary things you could do to improve the game day experience. But when the product you're watching on the floor is subpar and has been for quite some time, and then it's not used to, it's not what we're accustomed to seeing. If you've been watching Utah basketball for longer than a few years, you remember when the Huntsman Center was packed. And you remember when the quality of basketball was high on the Utah side of things. And, yeah, it's different in the Big 12, and the competition game in and game out is something that Utah basketball has never seen before in the history of the program. But hopefully that's a rising tide effect. And I don't know what comes first, the chicken or the egg. Do you give them the great product consistently to come cheer and then do the whole field of dreams, if you build it, they will come thing? Can the community do the basketball program a favor by packing that building to give Craig something else to sell? There's probably a bit of truth in all of it, right? And I don't blame you for not necessarily packing the building. But if we ever want to see this basketball program get back to even respectability, I mean, most people believe they're going to finish close to last in the Big 12. Certainly something needs to change. BYU welcomes in Texas Tech to Provo tonight. Texas Tech got Utah good. BYU got undressed against Houston. And Utah State, top 25 team now, Utah State, Jared Calhoun, 14-1, 4-0 in conference play. They're at San Jose State tonight. So there you go, some college football. So, Porter, before we send it over to Bill and Sean, we have a simmering beef in the market.
Oh, a beef?
Bill's involved.
Oh, no.
I don't know if you heard, but Craig Bolerjack was named Utah Broadcaster of the Year today.
I did hear about that.
You know how many awards that is for Bowler?
16?
3.
That's one more than Bill.
No, they both have 3.
Oh, they have 3. Oh, yeah. Bill's 3-time. Okay.
Well, yeah, you didn't hear any of the ads or the liners? Are you kidding?
You're right.
So we have Bill and we have Bowler.
3-time. And Sarah's 2-time now?
Sarah Todd. Congrats to Sarah Todd, our queen, Deseret News. She won Utah Sports Writer of the Year today for the 2nd time. But I don't know when this award was, where you had to like Venmo Wes Russ, what's his name? Wes Ruff.
Wesley Ruff.
$20 to like win it or whatever. I don't know when this whole thing started, what you have to like join to get it or whatever. But Bill and Bowler are now the only 3-time winners.
Oh, wow.
So there are several. This is a topic tree. All right. This is a topic tree because there are several branches here. Namely, how do you feel if you're Greg Wrubell?
Completely forgotten about. It's ridiculous.
I bet Wrubell
has he been there? Has he had it?
I don't know, but I bet Wrubell is pissed today. If Bowler's won it twice, if Bowler's now won it 3 times, and the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, has won it 3 times, our guy Rubel has to feel slighted.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a matter of time, though, right?
I don't have a list in front of me as far as who are the multi-time winners. I would imagine Greg has won it once because what has revealed itself is they simply just circulate through the same, 5 people.
Hey.
So maybe Rubel is due. But I want to know how Bill feels about Bowler winning his 3rd Utah Sports Broadcaster of the Year award, and therefore putting Bowler on the same level as Bill.
Maybe I'll get them in studio together.
Ooh.
YouTube.
Let's create a beef. Because I just have to wonder if there's jealousy, if there's outright hatred. Is there mutual respect?
Why don't we just tell Bill there's some beef? Tell Bowler there's some beef. Go from there.
You tell Bill, I'll tell Bowler, and we'll get them at odds when they're in studio.
I like it.
All right. Before we say goodnight, to get you over to some Utah men's basketball, shout out to Bowler. Congrats to Bowler, by the way, Utah Sports Broadcaster of the Year, and Sarah Todd for her Utah Sports Writer of the Year. I want to tell you about my friends at Prize Picks. It's the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members, billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. It's very easy. If you've ever wanted to get involved in the sports gambling space, this is a way you can do it without needing to learn over-unders or spreads or money line or the hook. This is picking 2 players and then picking more or less on their stat projections. So if we use the Jazz-Hawks game tonight, it's Lauri Markkanen more or less than 19.5 points, something like that. Jordan Clarkson more or less than 3.5 3-point field goals made. It's very easy, and they are giving away free money. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game all season long. All right, Porter, before we throw it over to Bill and Sean for some Utah basketball, what comes our way in a Wednesday edition of the show?
The aforementioned Sports Writer of the Year, Sarah Todd, comes your way on a Wednesday talking
nice.
some Jazz. Chris Kamrani Hour on a Wednesday. Neil Smith drops by talking some Utah Hockey Club. And the former Utah Sports Broadcaster of the Year, Bill Riley.
Oh, no. So Riles is on the show tomorrow?
Yes, and then Bowler on Thursday. So we're
okay.
We got it going.
I just want to make sure that he's not hurt. So we'll check in on the once upon a time Utah Sports Broadcaster of the Year tomorrow, and then the actual Utah Sports Broadcaster of the Year on Thursday.
That's the plan.
All right. With that, we'll say goodnight. Special thank you, Sean Moody, Tim McMahon, Scott Mitchell, Belle Frazier. If any of the sound you missed, go to the website, ESPN700sports.com. Check out our podcast page. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. Available wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review. Say nice things. Give us all the stars. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Coming up next, Utah men's hoops, a little college basketball with Sean Mooney and the one-time Utah Broadcaster of the Year, Bill Riley. On the other side, right here on ESPN 700.